This is the Board of Education regular business meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Law was provided by written notice on May 7, 2008 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Reporter, the Star Ledger, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Long Hill and Warren. Can I get a roll call?
Mr. Binder?
Here.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzerano? Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Here.
Mr. Pepe? Mrs. Mandel?
Here.
Mr. San?
Yeah.
Dr. Yaggett is absent. He notified us. And Dr. Seelig?
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Just by way of kind of the agenda, we have this is a night that we take pictures
like a
also,
herniated disc or
so that our picture taker or photographer doesn't have to stay forever. We started the meeting. We'll go as far as we can, and then when the other two board members that we know are supposed to be showing up tonight show up, then we'll stop and we'll take our picture. And
Can't you Photoshop them in, Paul?
Yeah, we'll try that if it comes to that. We have talented people here at the high school that I'm sure could figure that out. So, the other thing we're going to do is change the agenda slightly in the interest of our staff and trying to, because we have so many committee reports, we're going to move the committee reports after the F, G, and H. With your indulgence as a board, we can make that change so that we'll do A through D, and then we'll do F, G, and H. We'll have a short public session there because we have to have comment on the violence and vandalism report immediately following the report. And then we'll go back, we'll have all of our committee reports, and then we'll have our regular public session at that time, okay? With that, we can, if anybody has any concerns on that, I would like to welcome, or maybe Tom, you'll do that when, you can do that when the time is right. Welcome our students, representatives. With that, we can move on to our superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Dr. Seelig. It is my pleasure to welcome Jason Riddell and Stephanie Schmidt to our board as the student representatives for this year. We do have a very full agenda this evening with several reports and presentations by our staff, as well as a number of reports from our very active board committees. So I will defer any comments I have until the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. I will also defer comments for this evening. Mr. Stiles?
Just one comment. On Thursday of this week, the Executive County Superintendent, Trudy Doyle, will be reviewing our facilities, walking through the building. That's part of the QSAC process. That's it.
So this is the culmination of a long effort by the administration here and a number of other people to meet the requirements of QSAC and provide the necessary filing of reports and trying to get the facility ready. And this is only the facility part. This is the facility part.
The facility part, not the paperwork.
Right. Oh, it's not the paperwork. I thought it was also. So it's just the facilities inspection. Okay. The rest will follow soon. I shouldn't say just the facilities inspection. With that, we can move on to the student representatives' comments, if you have any at this time. We normally, just to familiarize with the process a little bit, you get a chance to, maybe Tom, you've already talked to them about it. If you have, if you have any comments at this time?
Yes, well we have...
Could I ask a mic to be moved down to you so we could actually hear you? Thank you. We are videotaped here, so you are, and mic, so.
Okay. We had, on Friday, we had our homecoming where we announced Mr. and Miss Watchung Hills. Everything went very well. And we also had a spirit week throughout the week to promote school spirit. We're having a bonfire on November 14th to end the, I guess, what are we ending? The fall sports and to start the winter sports. We're also having a blood drive on November 12th. And we're having Can Wars in November. What that's going to be is kind of just like a competition between grades to collect cans and other types of food to donate to like local food banks and stuff. And then we're also having the Halloween hallway on October 30th, which is just for the elementary school kids kind of like to go trick-or-treating and stuff like that. And then we're having Halloweenograms, which is, we're going to distribute those on October 31st. And it's just for friends to send messages and like candy to each other, just to say Happy Halloween. We're also having a wiffle ball tournament on November 11th between grades to compete for school spirit. And then we're selling T-shirts for a fundraiser that say Watchung Hills Warriors. And we have bagel sales every Tuesday just for a fundraiser. That's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you. Jason, do you have any comments?
Yes, most of the things that we're doing now have something to do with school spirit. It doesn't always involve the ASC making money or anything like that. What we want to do is we want to get more of the students involved in our school. So that's why we do the wiffle ball tournament, the Halloweenograms, as well as the can wars, because it doesn't just help our school and it doesn't just help our school spirit, but it also helps people around in the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Question? With that, we'll move on to then. Do you want to do the principal's report?
No, let him.
All right, we'll move on to the presentations from the staff. Did you want to introduce them?
I'd like to introduce to you one of our newest staff members, Dr. Kathy Angelostro. She recently joined us in July of this year as our new Director of Guidance following the retirement of Linda Gannon. So I've invited her here this evening to give the public and the board a overview of some of her activities over the last several months and some of the things that she's been involved with on an ongoing basis. So welcome, Dr. Angelostro. Thank you for your attendance tonight.
Thank you for having me, and my first board presentation, so I have lots of handouts to give you, and I'm hoping that will help you to get to know me. Let me get those for you.
Carnival. That's trouble. It's going to be way down paper.
What Dr. DeGancy and Dr. Stromsland are passing out are programs we've already done. In July when I came, I started working with the counselors who were here during the summer, and we streamlined and revamped, and one of my goals with the department is to get as much information to parents as we can on college orientation, newcomers, and in the package you're getting one with a lot of paper with a little clip. Those are letters that have already been sent home, including a newcomers program that we did actually the same day for freshman orientation. The two large yellow folders, one is from a senior night which already has occurred in July, and the other yellow folder you're getting in advance is for the junior night tomorrow, which is, I think, one of the most important nights. Each packet, although there is some duplication, gives information on how-tos for parents and students. Students are invited to both nights. And if you look through, you'll see, and I have some of them. In the junior night packet, which is for tomorrow night, it has a booklet on college planning. This is something I worked on with the counselors. They're also very strong counselors and know what they're doing. And what we did was go through it and provide parents with a handbook. This will be distributed tomorrow night. Also in that same yellow folder, some of it was already, if you have a senior, you already went to senior night, tomorrow night is junior night. You'll see some updated information on college acceptances, how to apply to colleges with our guidance counselor. And one of the other main things that we've done in guidance this year is revamped the college resume. In Watchung Hills, students get 5 credits for their resume, and it's a culmination of the 4 years of activities they've had in or out of school. So I've actually been going to all of the senior English classes to present the different resumes. And in either one of those booklets, you'll see a resume which starts with Christine, and The students have been wonderful in giving me their new forms. We've streamlined it. The other one we had a lot of writing and little mini essays within it. If you note on the college application information, Boston University, 38,000 applications for 4,200 positions. It's a lot of, I know it's a shock when you get this, but I like to give everybody a reality check at presentations. You'll see colleges don't want to read any more essays than they have to, so the resume that you have is really a bulleted, here's my honors and leaderships, here's my clubs and activities, here's my community and volunteer, and it's worked really well. The students have been handing them in so we can mail them with their applications, as opposed to the former version, which was where your mother went to school, where your father went to school, what was my goal, a lot of writing. So that has been streamlined a little bit. In the future, what's coming with presentations, junior night is tomorrow. We have a freshman parent night coming in December. There's a financial aid program coming in December also for parents of seniors. And there's also in January, the 8th grade orientation programs, which we'll be doing. And hopefully we will continue the college panel in March. The other main focus that I've been doing with the counselors is we've done a different timeline for juniors, which we're starting tomorrow. In the past, junior conferences were done in April of their junior year. This is the time period when colleges have junior visitation. So by starting tomorrow night with the college process, the juniors are available to to apply for these college visitations. They'll be getting these folders so they know to start working on their resumes and what's ahead of them. If we waited till April, by that time I'd actually like to have the resume started, college list going. So October will be our initiation tomorrow night. In January, we're going to be meeting with the juniors and the parents to start the actual college process, where the counselors will meet one-on-one. There'll be a letter going home to students. By April, the juniors should have, there's 3 things. They'll start working on the resume, their college list, fine-tuning their college visitation, so that by September, it's not trying to think of what I did freshman year. So it's just getting them on the ball a little earlier. So that's been our main focus. It's only been July, so we're trying to streamline whatever we can. Any other questions?
Kathy?
Yes.
I'm curious, when you gave that statistic at Boston University, 30-something thousand kids, 4,000 places, and you think, how staggering that is, but that's probably typical for many of the, the good colleges, way more kids applying than places open. And then you hear how certain colleges, whether it's a trend or not, I don't know, you know better than I do, that are going away from requiring SATs. Some are saying we're de-emphasizing them. Yet when you see so many more kids applying, and admission staffs, I mean, if you get 1 or 2 minutes having your application read, do you think the SATs are given less weight than they used to be? I mean, is there any clear-cut trends you see with that?
Well, the whole, now we have the writing part, which has been for a couple more years still not being used as part of the admissions. It's being used actually as an SAT 2 for writing. So still colleges, if they're using SATs, are working on the verbal and the math, the critical reading and the math. Big schools, including Rutgers and Penn State, which I don't know if any of you have gone to the Naviance, the Family Connection site, which is our record, Watchung Hill's record of college acceptances over the past couple years. There's a section, if you do go on it, called mapping. And when you go to mapping, it shows you the 10 most places our students have applied. Rutgers and Penn State happen to be one of them. These are enormous schools, big schools, that go by numbers, unfortunately. If they ask for a resume, it's an online application, and it says, name the 3 things you've done that we should know about. So for certain schools, SATs, definitely, there's your cutoff. University of Maryland, 36,000 students there. It is a numbers game. Some of the smaller schools, Lehigh, Lafayette, both of which, and Villanova, both are on that the 10 most colleges, or actually 20, I apologize, 20 colleges. They're going to look at a resume. So we need to present our students in the best light we can, because, yep, they're going to look at numbers and they're going to have their scales. You know, I'll see everybody that's gotten over 1,200 or 1,300, but let me see what else they've done. Are they well-rounded? So, and when I go to the English classes, I do tell the students, there's colleges that don't want this resume, that are strictly numbers, and that's going to be their cutoff. They don't want an interview. They don't want anything. And then there's those colleges that are smaller that will round table it as part of the admissions and say, well, look what this student's done. Look what, you know, accomplishments they've had besides the numbers.
Just as quickly, I mean, we've heard all about, you know, in the last 1 or 2 years peaking, you know, if that is correct, you know, numbers of applications of kids, and that there's some point, I don't know if we've reached it yet, or you could tell us, where, you know, kids applying is you know, starting the overall applications is going to start trending down. Are we at that peak? Is it going to stay there for a couple of years?
If you, in one of those packets, there's a pink handout that tells you the number of applications and how many freshmen are being accepted. I don't think we've peaked yet. Boston College, you know, they're 26,000 applications for 1,200 positions. Kids are applying to a lot more schools. I usually, rule of thumb, tell students, apply to at least 6, to reach, to realistic, to safety, if there's such a word as safety. I do think students should apply to the reach schools. I don't think we're in charge of bursting anybody's bubble, and you never know what's going to happen. But I know myself, in past experience, I've gotten 21 applications. So in those numbers are these students that are applying to 20 colleges, you know, 19 colleges, 18 colleges. It's expensive. It's an expensive thing, but I really don't see a peak yet. I even think with what I've seen so far at our high school, and students have already heard from colleges and have gotten in, so I'm happy about that. They still are applying to a lot of schools. There's still that uncertainty because of the numbers. We try to fine-tune, you know, and lead so that you're not handing us 21 applications. But students are still handing a lot. Today I just got 9 from one student, and that's the beginning.
Any other questions?
Could you just tell us a little bit more about that website you just mentioned?
If you go to the guidance site, which is actually currently under construction, there's a site called Naviance Family Connection, and if you click on that, you can go in as a guest, or students and parents are given passwords to go in, and it's really the best site. I think it's somewhat, I don't think it's used as best we can. We've introduced it. It was introduced, I think, a year ago here, maybe 2 years ago. We went over it at senior night, and we were surprised at how many parents are not aware of it. And then we're going to do it again tomorrow. 2 of the counselors do a PowerPoint on how to use Naviance. But if you go to this Naviance Family Connection site, it's a tracking for us. It also provides an interest survey, career interest survey, that you can check on, which is actually the one that Rutgers uses, so you can do that. The other thing that's great is if you put in a college name, it'll take you directly to that college site. You can look up their college visits, what their statistics are. And one of the best things is what's called scattergrams. And a scattergram is, if I pull up Villanova, I can see where all our students, they'll give us my average SAT, the average GPA, and we can see where our students range, accepted, not accepted, by little green dots and X's. And then a student who has an email can actually plot themselves on that graph so they can see if they've gotten in. It's a great site. Eventually, as they become more popular, we'll be able to send, we can develop our own Watchung Hills Common Application, send our transcripts off, and we'll become paperless. Right now, it's all paper.
But there's tracking on that, so if I was the parent of a freshman or a sophomore, I could go to this site and see where Watchung Hills students are gaining admission?
If at this point you've gone to a Duke game and your son or daughter said, oh my gosh, here I am, Dad, this is where I'm going, you would be able to pull up Duke as a freshman and see, okay, well now you can see you have to have a 4.1 and scores of 1600, 1400 for Duke. So it does give students a goal. hopefully we'll be presenting that at the freshman night, so parents at least get used to that site, because it's such a value. I can't say enough on how valuable that tool is if parents and students are aware of it. It's a great investment for us, because it's covered, I think the past 2 years at least are on the site.
Just make sure Dennis over there knows how to spell it, and he'll have it in the newspaper.
Oh, Naviance or
Any other
Family
questions?
Connection. It's right on the guidance website. Just click, you can click right into it. And you can go in as guest or with your email if it's registered with the school.
Jerry?
Yep.
Tomorrow's a program for juniors and parents in the evening.
Yes, 7 o'clock.
I gotta be honest with you, I'm a parent of a junior and I don't know anything about it.
There's a mailing there that was sent home, we mailed home, and also in August, there was, in those packets, there was another mailing that went
Remind the
called,
juniors tomorrow. that
We
this
got
is
the
gonna be
mailing,
going
Jerry.
on.
It's in the calendar.
it's in,
too.
yeah. So it's 7 o'clock, and the counselors will be there, and we'll start as a general session, and then do breakout groups with each counselor. You'll meet with your student's counselor, and we'll go over specifics. But Naviance, we'll show you Naviance, 7 o'clock in the Performing Arts Center. I try to put whatever I can many times to make sure we get everybody.
Kathy, I wanted you to please just speak for a moment about the new program that you wanted to institute about student internships and
Yes.
in a way that we can give students credit for that.
When we started scheduling with rotating block, we have some quarter classes which only meet for one marking period. Students that are trying to fill that space, I wanted to offer them something constructive, so I thought we could do something that it's a student assistant career internship program that'll be offered for 11th and 12th graders. And what it is, it's interdisciplinary between all the departments. And students will be able to act as a student assistant, a lab assistant, a peer assistant, a student teacher for any teacher in a class that they've either hit the limit, in other words, Accounting 1, Accounting 2, we don't have an Accounting 3 class. So if a student is really interested in business and has taken that many accounting classes, they, in agreement with the supervisor of that department and the teacher, would be able to sign up for a student assistant where it's a career exploration. They'll actually go to the class, help the teacher with whatever duties need to be done. In the science area, I've spoken with Dr. Charney. I know he would love to have lab assistants because that would help him in setting up the labs and helping the students. If the student is in AP Bio, they want to help the freshman bio class. In the ESL classes, for those native speakers, those students that are proficient in a language can also help with the students just coming into our classes. So there's a lot of opportunities for students to learn about a career, learn about what they think they might have a passion for. They may get in there into a child development room and say, what was I thinking? But it would offer them, marking period-wise, 1.25 credits, and we would only do it as a pass or no credit. It's not intended as another job responsibility for a teacher. We're really assisting a teacher. It's not something that's going to require an independent study that is going to be marked and graded. We don't want to put any more weight onto a teacher's duties already. So this is really a help, and for a student, a career exploration is the best way I can put it. And I'd like to offer it for, as I say, for a marking period. You can do it for more than one, you can do it for a year, but it would give you the 1.25 credits, so you're not sitting in a study hall, and either pass or no credit. And the teacher would have a lot of leeway on the how many times they come, how many times they shouldn't come, and what the expectations will be.
Okay, thank you.
We'd like to implement that starting the next marking period if the board feels that this is a favorable direction to go in.
The other question I've got is, the new high school standards are coming down the road, and I know we're going to be moving
doing
there.
committee
Is it
reports after
possible at
this?
some point that,
Committee
I don't know if you're
reports.
developing a plan or some kind of a schedule, but I'd be curious to see,
After the next one?
whatever it is that you come up with, or whatever, how we're going to implement those standards at this school and when.
Well, that's something that we're working on as a team, Jerry, so that's something
No,
that will
not
come.
now, I'm not asking
Yeah.
for it now.
Yeah.
That will come to the board in the, I'd say probably sometime in February, March.
Okay.
We're going to get the group picture.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome.
Frangilastro. Appreciate all your hard work. We've taken a lot of information and put it together and given them quite a bit
Read
to...
it at your leisure.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think what we'll do now is just take a momentary pause so we can get the group board picture, which I mentioned to you before, and then we'll come back to do the student and safety and security report, followed by the violence and vandalism report, and then from that we'll go to committee reports. So, what happened to Brian? We can kill the camera for a few minutes and drop the... With the board's indulgence, should we go into a recess for a few minutes and we'll get the pictures taken?
You need a motion?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
It's really more with the public's indulgence.
Yes. Can we get Brian to kill the... This will be about a 5-minute recess while we take this short, get the pictures taken so we can get this done to the photographer and get on the rest of the work. Whatever he says, it's fine with me.
It always happens. Right. Okay. Probably.
Rob?
He's on a painkiller? What happened to his hand?
I don't know.
Oh, he pulled a tendon or tore a tendon in his wrist. But he could be at just a fire, or he could be at a, I know he's doing an install, he's trying to finish lighting installation at Valley Mall.
Okay, with that,
He shows us.
with that we can reconvene. I apologize for the break there. We will start up again on the student and safety security report. You want to introduce it?
Yes. I'd like to introduce Steve Davies, who is our Director of Student Safety and Campus Security. Mr. Davies has enclosed in your blue folders a note that he sent out to the faculty, which I think really eloquently describes the theme that he and his staff try to carry forward in our effort to keep this campus as secure and safe as we possibly can. And I've asked him to give a little bit of an update about his the program here that will couple with Dr. DeGancy's report on violence and vandalism. So there'll be sort of a tag team. Thank you, Mr. Davies.
Good evening, all. Some of this, some of you have heard before because it does not change. Some of it does change. And then I want to finish up with a highlight on that note, and I'll explain why I wrote that note. Some of the preliminary stuff that's routine, the new faculty and staff were made familiar with the crisis management plan at new teacher orientation at the end of August. The seasoned veterans were made aware of that plan and any updates on that plan, the first staff meeting or faculty meeting in September. So that's been taken care of. That's an annual ritual. Another annual ritual that we've started about 5 years ago is myself, Mr. McConnell, and now Mr. Searfrost meet with every freshman class, and we give them a little speech on what it is to be in high school, what it is to behave in high school, some of the things that are no longer tolerated because of state mandates, such as bullying, hazing, and stuff like that. What's the difference between ratting someone out and what's telling on someone, and why there's a difference, and why we try to cultivate the telling in high school, and I'm going to get to that with regard to my summation. I still maintain a very open dialogue with the local police department and the county prosecutor's office regarding any intelligence information that would be pertinent to our health, safety, and well-being here on the campus. The entire student body will be drilled in another lockdown procedure in the very near future. This procedure should last no longer than 10 minutes. We will announce it beforehand so teachers will know. Basic reason for this is so that when they hear the priority 1 signal go out, there's not panic, that this could be a routine medical emergency. It could not be a routine medical emergency. It could be something that we need their attention undivided. That's why we run it that way. We want to make sure that they ask questions. We want to make sure that the kids in the classroom know what to do. The Honeywell mass notification system is now active. You can see that on the website. That will greatly assist the district in the timely dissemination of information to parents, everything from snow and bus emergencies to closings and such. Hopefully you haven't found these by accident. In an effort to provide safer environment for our pedestrians and our motorists on campus, speed reduction humps have been installed in 6 strategic locations about campus. This wasn't done to jar anybody's chassis. This was done in response to several incidents reported to me by both staff, a board member who was witnessed something, and some students. Those incidents could have had tragic results, so we wanted to lower the overall speed limits on our roadways and parking lots. Something I've been trying to get fixed for quite a long time, Gym 5-6, the exterior doors were finally all refurbished, so they now lock. They did not lock prior to this properly. People were pretty much going and coming as they pleased. We were forced to chain them, which is a violation. It was the only way to keep people in and out. That's been rectified. And finally, the last thing has to do with that little blurb. I went to a seminar about 2 weeks ago, another security seminar with Officer Sachs, our resource officer. And basically, I was dreading the drive down there because it was going to be another one of those seminars that told us if I buy this device, or if I buy this device, or if I have this kind of camera, or if I have that type of thing, my school is going to be secure. The presenter was a retired superintendent and principal who served both in Trenton and up in Vernon, so he's seen it all. And he said, you can forget all that. He said, what it comes down to is being able to walk up in the hallway and saying, good morning, Stephanie, good morning, Jason. I mean, it's first week of freshman class, I tried to get to know their names. And what I disseminated in that note, he's saying, if it's a school-wide approach to getting to know your kids, the school is inherently safer because they'll walk up to me and tell me something if we have a relationship. Every student that affected an act of violence on a school campus in the United States, in any case, was a disaffected kid. A kid that nobody knew, nobody said hello to, nobody tried to interact with. So the suggestions he gave to me, a lot of the staff does here already. I wanted the staff to read it and almost give them an attaboy, because what we're doing is more important than all the hardware. That just enhances the secure atmosphere. So what they asked us to do is exactly what we're doing. If I notice, I'll just pick Stephanie. You know, with this new Genesis, you can go in, I can go into Gradebook and see how she's doing. If she got 100 on an exam and you pass her in the hallway and say, hey, nice job on that World Cultures exam, they're like, how the heck did he know that? By the same token, if you go in there and you see the kid's been absent for, 7 days, or late for 7 days, you go in and say, is everything okay at home? And that's what they're trying to promote. So I disseminated that thing, that blurb, where I was dreading going to this thing. I probably got the most out of what he had to say, and it also reinforced that what we're doing is on the right track. And that goes hand in hand with everything we do here. And that's how I wanted to finish up my presentation. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, did you?
No, I just wanted to thank you for that thought, because that's something that I've always felt. The relationships that you and the staff make with the kids is so much, so valuable.
It's amazing how people sometimes will view a teacher who's got 10 kids in their classroom having lunch, and they'll say, oh, where's the time? Or listen to that noise. But, how does it hurt anything? And they'll go tell that teacher if they see something wrong before they're going to go tell somebody who's at no time.
And, I would like to just add one more thing. I think also it will help student achievement as well, not just security, but, because
Somebody
it just
knows.
elevates everyone's motivation.
Somebody knows. That's what it's all about.
Thank you for taking us on that course.
Tom, you?
Dr. DeGancy is going to give just a brief summary of the violence and vandalism report that we're required to file each year with the State Department of Education. We file it electronically. As a result of this report, any comments that are input from the public is welcome, and we will, of course, record that information and comments as it may be offered. So, Dr. DeGancy?
Thank you, Dr. Stromson. And I think it's appropriate that I piggyback off of Mr. Davies, because the amount of work that Mr. Davies, Mr. Heath, Ms. Bergdorf, and Mr. Snesek did and do to keep our campus safe is unbelievable. You must know that. When you see a kid who's misbehaving and you say, Joe, stop that, that's powerful. Somebody knows me. Chances are Joe stops that. Steve tells in that article about seeing a name of a kid who was new to our school on his lunch bag, and all of a sudden say, hey, Steve, how you doing? All of a sudden, Steve wants to know, how did Mr. Davies know me? I'm one of 2,150 students in this school district. That's a powerful statement. It means we care. And our student, staff, and parents are in great hands with our campus security under Mr. Davies' direction. But it's not only Mr. Davies, it's the entire 200 people who are a part of our learning community and the staff and the 50 to 60 support staff that do their job tremendously. Our state violence and vandalism report reflects a very safe and secure environment at the Hills. In the violence categories, which shows an increase, that increase is due in large measure to an increase of awareness and subsequent training on bullying, harassment, intimidation, and threats. After each incident, our VPs are obligated to mark down what exactly happened. And because of the training of our entire staff in this area, and because we're much more aware of how powerful or how negative that can be on our students as well as on our staff, we are much more aware of it and we take actions. Add to that the fact that with the training that Mr. Davies does with all of our students, that our guidance counselors do with their counselees, that our health teachers do in health class, kids are much more aware of bullying and intimidation, and we report it. They'll come to us and say, this is happening, that's happening. The very same thing that happens with fights, to try to avoid a fight, they'll go to Mr. Davies and say, watch Terry or watch Pete or whatever. The same thing happens with bullying. So because of the efforts of our staff and the efforts of our kids, the number of incidents reported are going up, and that's not a bad thing at all. We are now know, and I think our training is doing a good job. In the vandalism category, thefts which cannot be attributed to outside individuals must now be noted in the report. Therefore, in the theft area, there's an increase, and most of the time, it could be a loss of something. It might be a theft. It's something that's reported. We write it down. Mr. Davies and his crew investigates it, and hopefully, like an iPod or a cell phone, they'll reemerge someplace within our building. But we now have to report that, even though it's a student theft. In the weapons and substance abuse areas, we are relatively static. Again, because of the work of our staff, our parents, and our students. And that's basically it.
You know, Tom?
Yes.
You know, to the point you just said, I think really the interesting thing, while, you know, the bullying, harassment, intimidation categories is really, it comes down to, you know, words, you know, fighting words or intimidating words. And to the extent, you know, that there's been an increase in that, or not an increase, a higher number, I think the benefit, to your point, is that, you know, that's really nipping what starts as words and preventing it from escalating into violence. Because if you look at the other categories, simple assault, aggravated assault, and, you know, the things that, you know, where bullying is either not reported or not dealt with, you know, in many instances that leads to, you know, a serious you know, situation which does escalate into you know, an assault, you know, assaultive type of behavior. And I think to the extent that the numbers here at our school are really minuscule, you know, substantiates and supports the point that you're making, that while the increase, you know, the palliative, the good impact, the good effect of that is that's preventing what could be, you know, serious consequences if we didn't deal with those words.
I couldn't agree more.
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you.
We are required to open this up to the public for any comments, questions at this time, and we record those. Just remind you, we will then go through committee reports, and then after committee reports, we'll go into another public session related to agenda topic items at that point in time. So does the public have any questions on the violence and vandalism report from Mr. DeGansey? Dr. DeGansey? With that, we'll close the violence and vandalism.
Hearing none, and I guess I'll take that as a sign that people are satisfied with the degree of safety and security that we offer. I extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to Mr. Davies and his staff for their hard work and vigilance, and also to Dr. DeGansey and his staff for making this environment as positive an environment and climate as it is in this school. It is truly extraordinary. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move on to committee reports. We'll just run through them. We have a number of committee reports. It's close to 9, I think. Finance and operations, personnel negotiations, buildings and grounds, curriculum, co-curricular policy, and then a brief principals report. So with that, we can start with.
I think community and business relations met since we've last.
It's not asterisk, but if it met, we'll get to you.
Get to it.
Okay. You are asterisk now. With that, we can move on to finance and operations. Ron?
Thanks, Paul. One of the things that we all believe, I think, on this board and in supporting the communities, the 4 towns that we come from, is a constant effort to balance and strive to achieve educational excellence on behalf of our kids who attend this high school with the financial responsibility and acting prudently. And I think, while we've always striven to achieve those results, I mean, recent events that, none of us is isolated or immune to, shows us that even more than ever, wanting to make sure that we're prudent and responsible in spending, approximately $34–35 million a year of taxpayer monies. So there are 2 things that we're really constantly looking at. One is mostly on the expense side, and seeing if they're, through a close scrubbing of these expenses, that we can achieve savings that don't impact on the quality of life or the education of our students. Those are, and those that are sort of under a microscope at this point, because we spend a lot of money in these areas, the areas of busing. We spend, give or take, about $2 million a year in busing, and the property, the facilities, the money spent on the internal and external maintenance of the building. And so we are going to, and Tim, our business administrator, is going to take the lead in this. We're going to look at those 2 areas, really put a spotlight on them to see and to ensure that the monies, and it's about $3.5 million a year, those 2 categories, I think, that we spend on that, to really make sure that we're not only getting the bang for the buck, so to speak, but are there ways and that we can manage those 2 expense areas even better? Because to the extent that we can achieve efficiencies, economies of scale, saving money, that frees up money to spend, directly benefiting the students who attend this school, and also for the taxpayers to make sure that we're using those funds wisely. So those are 2 very big issues that we're looking at. Also, one of the things that we're speaking to our auditors, we want to ensure that the cash handling issues that occur at this school, and really it involves athletic events, arts and theater, and the adult school, that the monies that are end up being deposited without any fear of any theft or shrinkage, that the monies that are supposed to be deposited into the school accounts are in fact being deposited into those accounts. And we're taking steps right now to take a look at all of our cash handling procedures to make sure that they really exceed the best standards. Also, one of the things we spoke about at our meeting today is the issue of banking. As we said, the school budget is roughly $35 million a year. And one of the things that we spoke about was to ensure that the district is really getting the best business deal it can from our depository. Our depository happens to be Commerce Bank. One of the things that we directed Tim to do is to speak to the other local districts. Obviously, it's the Warren, Watchung, Long Hill, and Greenbrook districts to see if there would be an economy of scale. We're $35 million a year, and if you add up the school expenditures of the other districts, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of perhaps about $125 million a year. So we want to see if through this consolidation, perhaps a consolidation into one account, that all the districts could achieve an additional financial benefit in terms of services being provided by the banks, and also, most importantly, interest to make sure, because $125 million, needless to say, a point would be almost $1.5 million. So we're going to seriously pursue that as well. We're working we're endeavoring to get our last payment from the School Construction Authority. There's a ton of paperwork that needs to be done, and Tim will be reaching out to get some assistance in that regard. It seems every time we submit papers, more forms are requested, but it's very important, because as soon as we can get that, close the loop on that situation, we can get our final payments and won't have to go into the financial community, specifically to borrow some funds to meet that shortfall which we're owed by the government. Another thing that will be that I want to bring up, it might seem like a small amount of money, but we've estimated somewhere north of $6,000 a year the district is paying to light tennis courts. And for the most part, I can't say exclusively or 100%, that's not for school-related tennis practicing or games. Some percentage, but we don't believe most of that $6,000 plus. When anyone wants to rent our facility, use our athletic, our indoor gyms. Matter of fact, there's a volleyball league that we're in the process of concluding a deal. Is it $14,000 or $16,000, Tim? 14? 16. So we're renting, and with our athletic director, it's time that won't impact with the students here. It's $16,000. We're searching for additional revenue opportunities in the school to defray, obviously, the ever-increasing costs. But just as people pay to rent our gyms because we have to provide heat, or air conditioning, and other facilities, so too, if we're using the lighting, if others are using the lighting non-school related, we feel that the $6,000 or most of that $6,000 should not be incurred or spent by the school for non-school related business. So I guess, Paul, if we have to make it in form of a formal motion tonight, that at the direction, the courts would be subject to being lighted under the auspices of the athletic director in conjunction with the district. $6,000 here. So, there was to paraphrase Everett Gerson, who most people in this room don't know who he was. Some 30 years ago, he said $1 billion here. We're talking about the U.S. government, $1 billion here. Pretty soon that adds up to real money. Well, 6,000 here, 7,000 there. Pretty soon it adds up to real money as well. And that goes with our responsibility. So as I said, that really wraps up most of what we're talking about. One of the other things that we're doing in an ongoing methodology with Tim is to use that term budget scrubbing. We're continuously going through the budget in those non-critical academic extracurricular activity areas to see where in fact we can save money. Although it's been budgeted, we don't believe that just because money is budgeted that it should be spent. We have a responsibility to make sure every dollar that's budgeted in fact is, if it's spent for a wise purpose, and if it doesn't need to be spent, it will not be spent. One other thing I just want to mention, we spoke about this briefly. One of the things I think the school really needs to take up in terms of a green environment, environmentalism, stewardship of our environment, is to see if there are feasible projects, specifically dealing with clean energy, solar panels. And one of the things that Tim is going to take a look at is through the Board of Public Utilities. There's a site which, matter of fact, if you're interested with your home, it's called njcleanenergy.com. We're going to investigate where and if it's feasible to see what the dollars, the economics are, to see if, in fact, there are applicable projects we could do at this high school in the use of solar energy, alternative clean energy. So I think that really wraps up. We had a long agenda tonight. We're constantly seeing where we can save money and spend it prudently. So I think that really wraps it up.
If you want to make a motion on the tennis court item, why don't we do it under other business?
No, sure. Yeah, that was okay.
Did you want to mention the Bromptonian?
Why don't you take that? Thanks, Jerry.
Just that they came in to speak
Good
with
point.
The Finance Committee. We spent about a half hour reviewing the operations, including the debit card usage, which has climbed. There's been we're up to about 25% enrollment right now in the use of the swipe cards. So most of the money coming in by check, some of it coming in by that credit card system that we were approved or allowed Tim to go out and activate. And they're trying different things. They're looking for ways to improve both the menu, and it seems to be working to some extent, I guess. We'll have to wait and see a little bit longer in the year how it is going, but we spent a good meeting with them.
And with that being in mind, our goal is to end the year not only on a break-even basis with the food service operation cafeteria, but hopefully to start renewing and replenishing, building up a surplus, so that with the refurbishing and making those cafeterias a little more eye appealing, and kids now spending 45 minutes in their day in the cafeteria or in the gymnasium to make it more appealing in a way of spending their lunchtime.
Laura, you had a question?
Yeah, no, I have more of 3 comments. First one has to do with the lunch. I think the biggest impediment to revenue for the cafeteria is the fact that the kids need to sit down quickly in order to get their spot to sit down for lunch. And maybe their student representatives could add something here. But I think that more kids would be apt to go to the cafeteria and purchase food if you knew that there would be plenty of seats waiting. If you want to mention, go ahead, Jason.
Well, what happens at my table is I sit in the north cafeteria, the south cafeteria, right next to where the food let's out. But if I go in line and get my food and come out, then there's no spot left. So what I do is I usually bring a lunch, except on, I think it's day 3, no, it's day 1 today. Day 1 where my class is right next to there, so I can get there quickly, get my food and sit down. So if there's some way of either, I don't know, making the kids bigger or something that will speed up the service, then I think more people would buy food.
Well,
I think the biggest problem is lack of space to,
Well, I don't know. What are the hopes with this food card? Do either of you guys use the food card?
The PIN number. You have a PIN?
all they do is give their ID number. They don't even need.
Well, I mean, food card. Do you do money in the account?
Yeah.
Do you have money on account so you can?
Yeah, I use my account.
You like that?
I actually do like that because it seems like it's a faster way, especially because some kids, when they pay, they have like $50 bills, and that takes forever.
We have to tell us who those are, because we have to charge them more for their lunches. We like those kids with $50 in their wallet.
I understand my kid a $50 bill, it takes them 2-3 minutes to actually get the change, but I definitely like the accounts that don't.
Tom, I say this, tongue in cheek. Maybe we should set up a almost like a Giant Stadium with those personal seat licenses. We could set up the better seating for those that actually buy hot lunches. So maybe we could to add to your comments, so that good reserved seating. You go through the line and you get a nice seat.
But we did talk about that finance. We're aware of the situation. So
Laura, you had another question or comment?
Regarding the lighting for the tennis courts, one thought that came to mind as you were mentioning it, is there a security reason why we'd want that area lit up at night?
Good question. Steve says no. Davies, excellent question. We have perimeter lighting, and those lights don't achieve any added security benefit by their being on.
It's not just Steve saying no. Steve checked with the Warren
police. Yeah. So,
and they said they didn't think it was
good
necessary.
point.
And then with the New Jersey Clean Energy and with the I was at a green environmental fair recently, and there was a Somerset County representative who actually knew you. I had this card to give you. I guess they're doing free audits of school districts, and that's something that they're doing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? With that, let's move on to personnel.
We met on Monday, and we actually had an opportunity to talk to 2 gentlemen who were being brought forward for positions, one as an interim for the Director of Operations position, and one as an interim for the HR, Director of HR. The one gentleman, Paul Ward, is on the agenda this evening, and you were given a resume, actually both these gentlemen, but of Paul. Paul's been in the private sector, Catholic environment. God bless you.
Bless you.
Going back quite a number of years, since 1975. He's been at a high level in that position, in that role. And in the most recent time, he's been in a Catholic high school for 3 years in Jersey City, where he's what's the equivalent of the CEO or the superintendent in that position. So he's got some of the very skill set that we're looking for. And the thinking here is that there's the agenda item that talks about he'll be paid at a rate of $400 a day, and it's roughly about 6 weeks worth of pay, not to exceed amount on the agenda. This is being done for 2 reasons. One is right now they're falling behind, the department and the administration's falling behind with the vacancy that's there of the required work that needs to be done. So he's going to be responsible for doing that hands-on type work. The resumes and the applications from other candidates that were advertised are being, the job's been posted and brought down now, so that's being evaluated. So while that's being looked at, he would fulfill this role. He is one of also the applications, one of the people applying for the job, so it give us an opportunity to look at what he can bring to the job. So this was talked about in personnel, and the committee supported the idea of bringing him forward. The other gentleman, Dick Rosenberg, was being brought forward as interim director of operations. However, after meeting with the committee and getting a feel maybe for what it is that, you know, the responsibilities were, Dick reached back to us and said, due to other commitments, he really couldn't provide us, I think, the kind of time and dedicated effort, even as an interim. So he withdrew from that position. So you do have his resume there. He's got quite a background, if you look at his resume, however, including having been in various roles in the Department of Education at a higher level. And he's been a consultant. He's done a lot of things. So the idea has come up, and to the point that Rob raised about assessing the needs of the district in both the busing area and the operations area, taking a good hard look, putting it in the spotlight, as he said. The thinking is we have a district goal that addresses this. That's one of our district goals, is to look at these things. Dick may be a person that can fulfill that particular assessment. So what Tim is putting together an RFP to look at the scope of work that would be involved. And the thinking is that Dick may be the right candidate, much like a Bob Rader type person with that varied background and the depth of knowledge and the experience that could come in here and take that good hard look at our systems and what we're doing, and maybe give us some good insight as to maybe ways to improve. So that's where we stand with the 2 candidates, and that was the scope of my meeting.
Questions?
I don't think that the second part of this, your statement about the gentleman for buildings and grounds, was discussed in that manner, bringing it forth to the table. I think that's out of order. You're trying to do a great selling job, and you are, but that wasn't the discussion at yesterday's meeting. It was discussed with the 2 people, and once the gentleman withdrew, he withdrew. But to now go out and campaign and try to snowball something or make something that and state that it took place at yesterday's meeting is inaccurate.
No, I didn't mean to imply.
Well, that's what it sounded like, and I think everybody got that impression.
Let me go back and say it again. We considered him for the director of
And
operations.
he decided not to come forward. End of discussion.
I hear what you said, and he withdrew his name. The work that right now Tim is putting together an RFP that would look at somebody coming in and assessing.
That wasn't part of yesterday's discussion.
Pete, you've made your point.
And there's no action item tonight to do anything with that.
He's still campaigning.
He's just trying to respond to it. Let him respond, and it's the end of the discussion then.
I'm not campaigning. I'm just saying what can you expect to see forward. There'll be plenty of opportunity later on, I think, to consider whether or not this is the right action for the board. There's no action item tonight regarding this individual. So
this is his opinion, not the committee's
That's fine.
report.
He made that clear. Any questions on this, Pete?
I have a question on something else.
Oh, any questions on that?
No, on personnel.
Oh, personnel, go
the other
ahead.
matter.
Go ahead, you can ask any question you want on personnel.
Jerry, you mentioned the interim director of personnel. A couple questions. One, could you sort of share with the rest of the board what it is that you mentioned we're bringing somebody in for 6 weeks, but by the way, it looks more like 12 weeks from.
It was human resource, not personnel.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
It does look like 12 weeks, so he's right.
Yes, we did put that in for that period of time, only because if we did hire someone other than Dr. Ward, they may require a 60-day notice period, so we wanted to be sure we had enough time at least budgeted for it, maybe not necessarily using all that time.
Okay, I just, that was one part. I just want to get my arms around what is it that this person is going to be doing for us over these 12 weeks or so?
Basically, he's going to be taking over the personnel functions. You know, we haven't had someone in that role since May, and we've been sort of filling the void with our secretarial staff, and we're really losing ground in terms of trying to keep up with the all the functions that connect to certification, hiring, audits of the file, making sure the paperwork is accurate, keeping up with any of the requirements and mandates that come down daily from the State Department. Dr. Ward also teaches a school law course at Seton Hall part-time, so he's very well versed in the rules and regulations around this area, has a master's from Cornell in labor relations, so he's very familiar with the with all of the elements that go into this. So we basically to help us get through the period of time till we can identify a permanent person.
Okay, I'm never going to speak against a fellow graduate of my alma mater. I do want to get a sense, though, some of the things that you mentioned to me, quite frankly, are of a more clerical nature in terms of making sure we've got the certifications, that sort of thing. And I'm wondering to what extent the Personnel Committee, I don't want to revisit it here, but to what extent the Personnel Committee has looked at that this is the level of person that we need to do this. Well, and I'm not disputing that we need a director, but
that goes back to the last board meeting, though.
Yeah. Well, the idea that the structures are really not in place right now in that department, and this is the individual that we hope can bring some of that infrastructure to the table to make this work more efficiently.
And I believe being on that committee, I believe the gentleman understands that he will be doing a lot of the paperwork, as we opened our eyes kind of wide and said, with your credentials, do you realize what we need here? And he said, yes, I do, and yes, I will do that. So does that answer?
Did you also address some of the items that he might address that go beyond just the paperwork?
Yes. In fact, that's probably the stronger part of his resume, his experience in handling all the various situations that you can find yourselves in an HR role as a leader of an HR department. I mean, he's very strong in that area. He's not as strong in the clerical area. So the clerical paperwork is going to be more of a learning experience for him, which is why, again, he's being brought as an interim, not as a full recommendation. But it certainly was clear, at least to me, that, when we talked about the need for somebody in that department who could recognize situations, who could handle the more difficult aspects of an HR role, that was his strong suit. And I think that's where he'd be a good fit for what this school and district need right now. I think he can look at the department. I think he can look at it from, he's run departments, he's been in charge, he's handled the overall responsibilities of HR. So I think that's the aspect that we can get from him in this role, not just the paper-pushing part
well,
of the job.
And I appreciate that, Jerry, and I hope that we can. And the only reason I'm raising the questions is I don't, as we go further down or past this, want to be hiring someone at $100,000 a year to be doing a clerical role. And
any other, Pete?
Just to speak to this point about this gentleman. The committee, including myself, said yes, we would vote and recommend an interim person. But I now have to ask, and I also want to state that there were some reservations about this gentleman's experience and his preparation for this job based on his past work done in the non-public schools and the work done in New York. Both entirely different systems and different requirements that are needed. So when we say he has all the background on paper, true, but it is a unanimous recommendation only because we needed someone as an interim. Not that he is, quote, the best. And I have to ask, were there other people whose resumes were considered for, or looked at, and were they considered as an interim person?
Yes, he's by far the best qualified person, by far.
That's a matter of opinion.
Well, I think I have a...
I hear you, but that's a matter of opinion. So just so it's stated, it's a unanimous vote or recommendation based on the fact that we needed somebody, but may not be the best person for the job.
It gives us the opportunity to investigate it further.
Gives us some time frame by which we'll be able to manage the HR area better than we're doing right now.
Is this
Do you
person
have another
a question?
Yeah, Rob.
So,
Or did Laura just say Rob? Laura, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
When Peter said, I mean, looking at the word interim, this individual, Mr. Ward, is his expectation, or is it our expectation that, well, it's his expectation that he could be considered full-time, or is our expectation he is merely interim?
No, he will be considered in the pool of candidates for the permanent position. That's correct.
Is that what you?
Oh, no, I understand that to be the case.
Is that where you guys?
The only reason I voted yes to bring it forth was because we needed someone today, yesterday.
So I gather this is a not to exceed 12 weeks, and in that time frame, other candidates will be considered.
That's correct.
And he's going to be brought on with that, you know,
Yes.
he's aware of that.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Well, can you? If, I mean, to the end of 12 weeks, you don't have someone. Do you need to come back to us to renew it? Is that what you want to do?
Yes, 'cause we're
Absolutely.
we're
We're only
Peter?
approving it
Yeah,
for 12 weeks. Yes.
If that were to be the case, we would need to do that.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
With that, we can move on to the next committee report, negotiations.
This will be much shorter because with my busy work schedule, we actually have not had a chance to meet. However, Fran, both at the beginning of last week and Pete just tonight had passed on to me word that members of the PSA were anxious to get moving with this. So I have, since last week, had 2 informal conversations with Mike and with Jeff Charney. We are going to be meeting, I'll be meeting first with our committee the middle of next week, and then meeting with the others towards the end of next week. And I'm hopeful, based upon my informal conversations with Mike, that at our next meeting, we're going to be coming and recommending a contract approval with the PSA.
Okay. You mean at our next board meeting?
At our next board meeting.
All right, any questions for negotiation? With that, we'll move on to buildings and grounds. Tim, can you, I wasn't there.
I was there if you need any.
Do you have your notes?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Onward, Jerry. You
Okay.
can do the B&G.
Don Fiore came and gave us a project update, number of items. The pit lift, the new controller is in, came in last week. So he's just going to talk to them about making sure as far as getting it installed goes. He's also got an idea he floated to the committee about what to do with the orchestra level. He's suggesting that the use of a platform, a split platform, one with a lift, one with a stairway, that could be a temporary piece of equipment that would, be there when it's in down position. So he's put together an entire package of code that he's going to provide to the DCA, to John Mallon DCA, to try to support that. It looked pretty interesting. We talked about the sprinkler system, the Premier. A lot of issues. I think most of them are paperwork and documentation. But that's now the item since the fire alarm got approved. Now the sprinkler system is the next thing that has to be dealt with. He talked about stair A has a bounce in it that he's got to investigate. It may be a poor weld or something like that, so he's got to open the sheetrock, check the welds underneath. It's one of the stairways there. Let's see. There's some issues, I think. I'm trying to read the team room HVAC.
Right.
Did I say it right?
That's right.
No thermostat, maybe the dampers aren't functioning correctly. You know, it has to perhaps to do with the fact that part of it's an old system. So he's looking into that issue. The storm drainage in the girls' locker room is another one. Stadium, the projects, you know, for the stadium, the toilets up there. That's also going forward. I guess waiting for the wetland study. We talked about. Let's see. They came and sealed the floor tiling. I guess there's a couple of things he's waiting for. That's almost complete. He just needs some tiles that they owe him, and just to make sure everything was done the way it was supposed to be done. Talked about the TV studio, the corridor. He said it's really a limited scope of work that needs to be done with the removal of the existing partition and then putting in a sheetrock. So we're looking at whether the best way of trying to accomplish that so that can get completed also. Let's see. Tim reported, I guess, that the PAC sound consultants are going to be used. I think everything's in order as far as doing the sound study for the Performing Arts Center. He's got the company in Westfield all lined up, and I think everything's going to be ready to go for that one, so we can do the sound system study that's needed before we can actually go out and buy the equipment. You share with us the annual M1 maintenance form, which I think is in here for approval this evening.
No, next meeting.
Oh, next meeting? Okay, sorry. That's just a form for the state to report on O&M expenditures. We have the B&G priority list of items that need to be looked at as far as the budget and future work needs to be done, so the committee's going to review that. You see a couple of agenda items on here that we talked about. One is the closing of the order balance with Telit. That's going to be approved this evening. There's items that they've not completed. There's a purchase order outstanding for about $19,000. There's a company that's a Somerset cooperative company through the county, I guess, that's authorized to do this kind of work that would actually do it cheaper. That's an item that's going to be approved D11. We talked about the maintenance agreement with MSC. What's on the agenda tonight, although there is a question. We asked about whether York and MSC, if that's going to be coordinated, so I would need to find that answer out. And then there's also a bid on a plumber that the district can use for emergency type repairs. It's a $92.75, Binsky and Snyder. That's another agenda item, D16. Any questions about?
Jerry, you mentioned the corridor in the TV studio. The partition, does that mean that the window is going to be removed and a solid partition?
That's what the state wanted.
So does that raise, I recall that when we had designed that, or when it had been discussed when I was on Buildings and Grounds, that the reason for the windows was to allow a smaller staff to supervise a larger area. And I'm just wondering, has that issue been addressed at all? Or we just, the state says it's so?
The only way we can use the room is to follow the recommendation or what the requirements is that not be allowed. They won't approve the room for use with that partition in there. They want it to be sheetrocked. They want it to be, so I mean, you have to talk to the administration about that particular issue. That's not come up as far as I know in B&G.
Okay. The sound system for the auditorium, we need to study that before we can go out.
We need to do a design.
No, we're essentially hiring a consultant. They're gonna provide the specifications for the equipment that's needed.
So are they the company that's going to provide the?
No, independent.
They're independent. They're going to do bid specs. They're also going to do rigging as part of it. they're going to do that.
So then what kind of time frame are we looking at to actually getting a sound system for there?
Well, we're hopeful to get it before the spring musical.
Okay, so then what do we do for the fall drama? I mean, we have that, we have to rent stuff
Yeah,
again.
we're not going to make
What'd
it
you
fall
say?
drama.
The fall drama. we have to
Which is
rent
a large
stuff.
project.
It was a joke. Speakers.
Jerry, you're talking about the our Performing Arts Center and our lift. I have a concern about removing the chairs. If we want to use that at the up position for graduation, where we want all of our students up there for some reason, or if there's a dance program, we want to use it, it's very difficult to remove the seats. Now, we know that, but while we're still in the throes of construction, it might be wise to try to research and try to find a way. I was just up at Bard College. Frank Gehry has this fantastic theater up there, and I was able to get in there and speak to the man who's head of technology up there, and they have the same thing with their orchestra lift. So, of course, my question was, and how do you remove your seats? And he said, that's a very good question. If you find a good answer, let us know.
Yeah.
Because he said it's so intensive, labor intensive to take them off.
We've actually talked about this issue, this very issue in the committee, and we don't have an answer yet, but it's one of the items that we know has to be looked at.
I don't know if anyone has really found the answer, because they have $1 trillion. They have a very, very expensive place up there. And it's such a shame, because we've spent so much money to utilize it, and all we're doing is utilizing it as orchestra seats. It's a waste. There has to be an answer to it. We just have to find it.
Pete?
Tim, you had mentioned rigging, and
Yes.
I guess I had been under the impression that in the construction contract, the contractor was required to train us on the rigging. Is this something else for
Theater rigging. That's theater rigging. This is the sound rigging. Different.
Sound rigging.
Sound rigging.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same.
The theater rigging is in terms of using the, it's a
The
fairly
lighting,
sophisticated
basically,
system,
and
yeah.
pulling
This
things
is
up and
sound,
down.
entirely sound.
Okay, I never heard rigging.
It's not a major piece of the contract. The contract, or the major piece of it is developing the bid specs to go forward with the equipment list and all that.
Thank you.
Sandra, I had 3 points I want to make. Point was seating on the lift. This is something that we brought up. I brought that for 3 years now. I mean, the bid spec originally was for removable seats. If anyone, and I'm sure almost everyone here at this table has seen those seats on the pit lift, they're removable as anything is removable with a with bolts and with a drill to remove them. I mean, they're
not Velcro.
It was never. It was never. I took the position 3 years ago when I first saw this, and I think a lot of us agreed. The architect, whomever devised this, it's not a portable system. I mean, you can't. I don't know how many. There are 100 seats on that. About 100 seats on the lift platform. 50, 60, 70.
74.
70. They're bolted in. And if you unbolt them, you're going to have probably 500 holes. So I think the first step has to be probably, because you'll never be able to use it in its highest position, for theater, for kids to, come out, is that those seats can have to be removed, and they're going to have to patch up, and patch is not even our word, to restain, resand, to fix that. And the decision maybe has to be made if there's no, feasible system. Do you remove the chairs entirely and fix up the lift so that you can use it, and then put, I don't know if you could put folding chairs, whatever it is, because the situation now is untenable, it's unworkable, it's totally ridiculous. And the architect, because I remember seeing those specs, it said removable temporary seating on that, and it's bolted in, so it's ridiculous. The other 2 points that I just want to ask quickly to Jerry or whoever, and maybe Fran knows this. Have we asked, I mean we, the district, asked the DCA under what circumstances would they permit that lift to be operable in its lowest original form, meaning as a true orchestra pit lift? Or has the DCA said there are no circumstances that I can think of that we will permit you, the district, to operate or to have kids on that pit lift in its lowest condition? Has anyone asked that question?
No, that's what I was talking about before. It's not been asked, but Don's put together a concept, and he's researched all the appropriate codes. He's got a package to bring down to DCA right now that would allow that use. Basically, it involves a temporary stairway and a temporary lift that can be moved out of the way when the stage was elevated, but when it's in the lowest position, would allow the egress that's needed. So he's got an idea. He showed us a sketch of the thing, you know, at least a floor plan, and he's got all the research code. He's going to go down and meet with the DCA himself as far as
you know, that goes to another issue of design, and certainly with 70-something seats bolted in. I mean, you know, the pit lift essentially is rendered useless even in its, you know, upmost or bottommost position with 70 seats that are bolted, you know, with metal bolts. And the other thing I wanted to ask, I don't know if you know the answer to this, or Fran, do we have, you know, now that we've, you know, had our renovation, we've had the new construction, do we have anywhere the schematics with the floor plans, the building, HVAC systems, you know, where those schematics are on a disc? Do we have that?
We have, we do have as-built, and those,
You mean physical renderings?
Documents,
okay.
Yes.
Of the as-built facility, not as designed, but as built.
Well, I care more about the as-built, because
yeah.
I think there are a couple issues here. You know, one is, and I want, you know, when Steve was speaking before, we need to get those schematics placed on a CD and certainly made available to Steve, who's head of our security, to Warren Police Department and the Somerset County. God forbid there's, you know, or the fire department. God forbid there's an emergency here, that the appropriate authorities, you know, could have that, you know, the schematics of the building, you know, handy. So if they have to make, you know, a decision, you know, that they'll be able to have that information. And there's also ongoing maintenance that, you know, that personnel should have access to it, where you put that up. I mean, we've spent $45 million, and we need to get those schematics. I mean, the as-builts, you know, put on, you know, the appropriate, you know, computer software to safeguard that. So you know, that's, you guys should, you know.
The committee has been looking at that for a long time, making sure that we had as-built and
no, but I'm saying put them on, to take the final step,
right.
to transfer that onto CD computer technology.
We actually talked about having, you know, even one of the computer classes, CAD classes or whatever, doing that, because it's something that's needed for anyway for some other things that are going to be required. So
For the fire, basically.
For the fire.
Well, there's also, you know, security issues that the
right.
county and local police need to have that also. So, well, maybe we could get get that in the to-do list and, you know, in the flow, so that we could, you know, have a marker, you know, because I think it's important enough that, and I don't see it really being a cost issue. It's really getting around to doing it. That needs to be.
Any other questions on B&G at this time?
No, the only other thing I didn't report is the lockers that were supposed to be fixed in the summer. They came in and replaced 5 of them. So we're seeing how that works, but I think there's still some locker issues.
All right. Any other questions on B&G or comments? With that, we'll move on to curriculum.
That was really Kathy's guidance presentation tonight, which she gave, so that you heard everything I heard.
All right. We've all had questions on that. Co-curricular, Pete?
Yeah, we had a meeting, and there were 2 main items up for discussion, and you'll see them reflected in the agenda for tonight, that the committee felt that we should, and recommended, that we have a competition cheerleading squad and hire the coach. It was discussed at last month's board meeting, and we took it to discussion, and it was unanimously felt that we should hire the coach and have our kids compete as they do, as other schools do, with separate teams, cheerleading and competitive cheerleading. And that's reflected in the agenda. And then Tom brought forth the script and cue misprint, I think it was, Tom, that resulted in the
script and cue.
Yeah, script and cue, so that we could operate as he recommended, and made a recommendation to the committee to be able to correct that. I think it was a misprint, as we thought it was.
I'm not sure if it's a misprint, but instead of being 3 to 5, it went 15 to 21 for the steps.
And that,
Yeah.
we didn't, and on your recommendation and the administration's recommendation, felt that we needed to change that or whatever, and that's reflected in the agenda as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't.
On the agenda, I think, what Peter found on the agenda, it's item C9.
Payment issue, how much they get paid.
Oh, the payment issue.
There's a-
Okay. Step on the guide.
How much
Yeah.
the correct
Is that correct?
That's what I was
steps
asking.
equaling the correct payment.
Okay, I'm
No, when we
Sounded
get
like
to-
the kids had
No, not physical steps.
Because when we discussed all these positions during negotiations, that was not the intent, if I remember correctly, to have that wide, that bigger pay range for that position. That was not the intent. And so to correct that, this is the result.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And that is C9, is that correct? Is that the one, Tom?
Yes, it
Figures of
is.
steps, not
He's
literal
referring to
steps.
C9. Just to clarify.
Any other questions on co-curricular? All right, with that, we'll move on to policy. You have in front of you, we met about a week ago. You have in front of you 5 first-read policies, 4 second-read policies, which would then become effective, and then 3 regulations, which are in there for the first reading. By way of reminder, the first reading simply gets it into the docket so that we can then vote on it at the next meeting, or we can make modifications to it. The second reading are those that are then adopted. We modified, so that you're aware of it, per the questions and comments from the last meeting, we modified policy for second reading 5111 on foreign exchange. And I can't even repeat, there was wording that was in there in section bullet item 4 on this last page of that, which was a little confusing. It now reads, foreign exchange students must reside with a host family from Warren, Watchung, Long Hill Township, or Greenbrook. I'll also remind you that the policy in the 3rd paragraph states that tuition payment to the board will be required of the full unsubsidized per pupil cost of education for the period of study. So we're expecting students the district is expecting to be paid for this students who attend here as the board requested. We are going to add, if I can direct you to number 1 on the second page of that. It starts off, it says, foreign exchange students shall be at least 15 years of age and not older.
19 are non-matriculated, yeah, and not or non-matriculated.
We want
have
19 years of age, are non-matriculated,
and
and have not graduated from high school or the equivalent. So we want to add those words into the first bullet, first item number 1 on the second page of that policy. So basically, they cannot be older than 19 years of age, they have to be non-matriculated, and they have to not graduate from high school or the equivalent in some foreign program. Pete?
I know it means something to you, but what does it mean to say that they are non-matriculated?
It means that they haven't
Non-degree.
completed a program of study. Like, for example, IB. In some foreign schools,
Okay.
they would have completed an IB program.
Okay. Paul, the other question I have is the second and fourth paragraphs of this, which recite the requirements for the F1 and J1 visa.
Right.
I continue to...
F1 and J1.
F1 and J1. I continue to believe that those should be listed as notes after the policy rather than part of the policy, since this board does not decide what the requirements for an F1 or a J1 student visa are.
Okay. Does the board want that change made? I mean, we can make that change and still vote on it and agree to it.
I thought the same thing too, but
You what?
I had thought the same thing too. It really doesn't belong in our policy to set,
The suggestion-
spell out what the
Okay.
requirements.
The
for-
suggestion, we can still vote on this as a second read and get it approved, but and move
Formatting.
paragraphs 2 and paragraph 4, which speak to the requirements of an F1 visa and requirements of a J1 visa, as notes or
Yeah.
footnotes to
After
this
the
policy. Would that be acceptable to everybody?
Why don't you just put required to get the appropriate, visa requirements
Well,
rather than
I think
specifying?
I think the idea is...
What?
I think the idea is if we keep it in the document, then when our administrators or others go to look at it in the future, all the information will be in one place. It's just that since we can't say what those requirements are. We'll put it in the notes that these are what we understand them to be. And that way we'll have a whole document that someone can look at and see the whole story.
Well, maybe you could just add a comma or as then required by law.
Yeah.
I mean, because I don't know, it might be a J1 today and it might be a J2 next year. I mean, it's not for us to keep track of
What I was going
visa
to do
requirements.
was just put language that the board has been advised that the current requirements for these visas are, and then drop the 2 paragraphs.
You can provide us with that language, we'll just move to the end. Okay? I don't like to repeat law, but sometimes you need it for clarification purposes, so people know.
We
what's
don't
on.
want to be contrary to law if it changes either, I think, to Peter's point.
Well, sometimes in policy, you state what you're going to do. That becomes a statement of what you're going to do, and then if the law changes, you may then have to modify your policy later on. But at least you have some guidance up until a point in time. Because every time the law changes, we have to change. We can be in a whiplash of trying to make changes. I have some experience in the pharmaceutical industry in this area. So you kind of put in place what you believe you're going to be doing or not. So there's a reason to somewhat to do that. Any other questions? If I have any other questions on second reading, I will tell you that we're kind of past the hurdle, not quite completely. If I can reflect on, you were at the meeting, of getting through all the CUSAC policies. We're mostly through with those. We've gone back to revisit our friend, the facilities use policy, which we'll be talking to you some more about probably at the next meeting. And we will be bringing forward another policy at that time on personnel records, which we kind of put on hold to bring forward to you until we had clarification of some of the legal aspects of personnel records and what was the requirement actually on that. So we're bringing those things forward to you. Any questions, other questions on policy at this time?
Just the thought occurred to me, because I heard it yesterday, is there's a requirement, it's a new policy under CUSAC as far as contracts go. The VA contract is covered. And we got the language from, I think, Strauss Esme, and I'm not sure we have because it was an entirely new policy. If I can remember, I'll go out to the car and get it afterwards. And
Right, maybe we could check that, Jerry, because I know we did something with that fairly
it's a
recently.
brand new policy. We had to do it very quickly, first and second reading last night for CUSAC.
Right. Our experience is a lot of new things that seem to pop up from CUSAC that nobody really knew you needed until most recently.
Okay.
So if you have that, if we
Yeah,
could get that would be helpful. We can at least take a look at it. I think we've done a lot. We've done some things in that specific area with regard to the VA and the superintendent's contracts and making sure they're published and things like that. Any other questions on policy at this time? Laura?
Can I comment on the school facility policy, or do you want to?
Facilities use policy?
Right.
It's not on the table. We don't have it on the agenda at this point in time, so it's really, nobody else has it in front of them. I don't even have it in front of me, okay? We will, you're part of the policy committee, so you can come in, we'll talk about it in the meeting between now and the next board meeting, okay?
You want other comments on policy too?
If you have any, if you have if you could provide written comments on first readings to us, then we will make those changes.
The only thing I would suggest is on 7410, I didn't see anything there addressing the use of overtime.
74.
That's the maintenance and repair facilities where
This
it's
is the
talking about
regulation.
repairs by district staff. And it's just one thing, when I read through the policy, it seemed to me that maybe there should be something that addresses the use of overtime.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Take a look at that.
We'll take a look
See
at
if
adding
that would
overtime
be-
in there, see if it's needed. Any other questions on, again, the regulations that you have in front of you are mandated regulations, so we'll take a look at the overtime piece of that and see how it needs to be in there if it does add it in. Any other questions or comments at this time? Now, on first read policies, or on the regulations, you can email me if you have comments or suggestions to that, and we'll bring those comments back either with a corrected policy or added policy, added to the policy. And we will then bring those back to the board either as first reading again if it's a lot of changes, or a second reading if it's a minor change. So if you have any comments, take the time to take a look at them and get back to me on it. With that, we'll move on to Community and Business Relations.
Thank you. When we last met, it was myself, Sandy, Fran, and Judith Mulder met with us. A parent came forward, Karen Pinzola, who generously agreed to give her time to put together a new committee and foundation for the arts to help fund different things that we need theater-wise and you know, for all the arts in the school. Karen works for the New Jersey Council of the Arts and has a wealth of experience in this area, and I know that piece of it's moving forward. And Judith Mulder put forth a sign-up sheet of back-to-school night and got numerous parent volunteers to get involved in this. And I just want to thank everybody who's come forward to contribute to the start of the Foundation for the Arts. Another thing that I wanted to mention, I've been going to the PTO meetings as a board representative, and we had our first PTO meeting of the year, September 11th, which was very well attended, and PTO does a lot for the school. Last year in particular, they raised money to purchase portable smart boards, I believe for all the departments, or?
Not all,
No,
six.
Six portable smart boards, which are very much appreciated. And what I'd like to ask my fellow board members is if you'd be willing to share the time and you know come to the meetings. I have the dates here, and I'm happy to put an email out. But rather than it's just myself, you know, representing the board, they can get other people's input here. The next meeting is October 23rd. There's a meeting November 13th, January 22nd, March 19th, April 16th, and May 21st.
Why don't you send out an email?
I said it, I will send an email to you guys. So that, the next one is October 23rd, if anybody's interested in heading out to that.
I won't be in town.
As well as a date to put on your calendar, and I think it's been in Fran's Blue Notes, is there is a PTO dinner dance on March 6th.
Right.
So that's
Casino night.
What time are they meeting?
They meet at
7:30.
7:30.
And where?
Right here in the library.
Okay, thank you.
And another thing, today was the curriculum committee meeting for the teachers, the teacher representatives. I was at that representing the board today, and Lee's covered that with Catherine Angelestro gave the same presentation on the Student Assist program, the same, to talk about that. And they talked about future courses, courses in financial literacy, something focusing on alternative energy. And one of the things that came up that I just wanted to mention is that the Media Center here has a wealth of information for students, and maybe you guys are aware of this. If you go to the high school website and go under Media Center, there's all kinds of resources for research, and we just wanted to make sure that students were aware of all the availability of all the web resources.
We've really been putting an active push on getting involved with as many online resources as we can afford to get involved with.
Yeah, no, and I went on there before the meeting, and it's quite an extensive list, and a lot of care obviously went into searching for good websites, and one of the things that came up was that literacy and searching for the web is an important skill for our students to have, because it's the typical thing is just to go onto Wikipedia and you can get any kind of junk there, but if you know the right kind of words and search engines to go to, you're going to get more reliable, helpful information. So I just wanted to mention that.
Any questions for community relations or for the curriculum, the faculty curriculum committee?
Is there a newsletter going out?
What kind of newsletter?
PTO?
Newsletter?
Need for PTO?
No, for work. Can we do a newsletter here?
Well, we do a newsletter that's district-based that Ellie Matthews puts together.
Yeah.
That comes out quarterly, so we should be seeing one around Thanksgiving.
Okay. Any other questions? With that, we can move on to principal's report. Dr. Yancey.
Both Steph and Jason did a great job of saying everything that I would naturally have said, and I thank them for that. The only thing I will share is Dr. Stromson asked the administration look into the possibility or the viability of having maybe 2 back-to-school nights. We may be outgrowing one of them. The one night that we have for 2,200, 2,250, almost 2,300 kids next year, and with the parents and with the parking and whatnot. So there are schools who run this model. I've already talked with Dan Root, president of the association, preliminarily, and we can look into them. We don't have to invent the wheel in this one. It's just a matter of looking what the models are and see what suits Watchung Hills. We may be at that border.
Any questions?
The only other thing, if you're going to, I mean, the parking is the big thing about that. So if they could arrange for school buses and satellite parking or some other way just to get the parents here, I mean, that's the big problem. So if you can't do 2 school nights, at least you got to deal with the parking.
Any other questions? Okay. For those of you who've had the endurance to wait,
God bless you.
which I appreciate. This is the first opportunity for public comment. The comments are limited to agenda topic items of this meeting. There'll be a second one later on in the, in the meeting for any topic. If you choose to comment, limit your comments to 5 minutes. We need your name and address. I understand you probably have a very specific topic that you want to try to cover. It may not be an agenda topic item, but I really don't think you need to wait until we're all the way done. So go ahead and make it now, okay? Because you could be here till 11:30 tonight. No. Well, we have been.
I was trying to weave it into the agenda. I thought, well, finance, operations, building and grounds, policy. I have all those topics. But anyway, again, I appreciate your time.
Can we get your name?
I am Mike Mupo. I'm the president of the Watchung Hills Wrestling Association, as well as a Warren resident. And I just wanted to raise a particular issue I had. I want to thank the president and the board members that worked with me in the past on getting the fee lowered for the Watchung Hills Wrestling Association. So I appreciate that. I did have an additional item that came up. I went to the Warren Recreation Commission, and I asked them, as well as the other recreation board members at the other towns, if they would help me finance this fee. And Warren told me that since I was a member of the Warren Recreation, I'm a sanctioned Warren Recreation, sport, the Watchung Hills Wrestling Association. They said that they'll help me. They won't pay. They won't give me any money. But they said we should be paying a fee because we're a sanctioned sport. They said that since we have 60-something% of the Watchung Hills Wrestling Association are Warren members, and that they would then recommend that I come and talk to. They were going to come. They said that they also had called several times, but they would talk on my behalf. Since Eleanor was away, I thought that, and I told her I'd be coming here to at least make the board aware of this particular situation. Okay, again, I think that we have the season coming up, and I still haven't received anything on the matches, so I know that that's going to be an additional fee that we're going to have to pay. And I wanted to make sure I understood exactly what has to be done and the rationale for all this.
Okay. We've worked with the Warren Rec Commission. We've had them in to talk to the committee, policy committee, on the use of facilities. We're trying to align what we're doing with what they're doing. We've reached out to Watchung and Warren Long Hill, so we haven't met with them yet. We plan to. As soon as we find that out, we'll figure out how to deal with the kind of thing that you're bringing up. This first I've heard that you're, in this specific case, that you're part of the Warren Rec Commission sanctioned team. I understand that, what that means. I've seen what they're trying to do also, so yeah, we'll take a look at that.
Because I think there was a technical thing. You had to have 60-something% of their...
They have a percentage that you have.
Yeah, so I was a little bit under that percent, and I think we had 62% last year rather than 66% or something like that. So I had asked if they, if that meant that I need to limit, external members from other towns, and they said no, we'll grant you, that look-see. But if, at a very minimum, I would think that we would then for the 60-something% that are Warren residents, we should get an exemption for that, and then we can then petition the other towns to support us.
Is this to use the gym for the kids, the wrestling association?
Yeah, right, yes.
No, I'm a little confused by something. You can just tell me you said something about not finding about the schedule for matches.
Yeah, so I haven't got my match scheduled yet, so I'm working on that as well, and then the fee associated with that.
From us or from the leagues that you're in?
No, here. We first submit the schedule here, and then we submit it.
Oh, sorry, he submitted the schedule, just so you guys are clear. He submitted the Saturday schedule.
Right.
We have to respond to him.
Yeah.
Okay.
When did we get it, Tim?
Not too long ago. I don't know exact date.
Well, I submitted one that I got back last week telling me I wasn't able to do any Saturdays, so I submitted another one today with a limited number of Saturdays after I've gone to the Chinese school to make sure that one Saturday we have a conflict with them, and they said they agreed, or at least I haven't heard back from them that they disagree, but that they would move to another gym for one particular day when we need a match. And we got the basketball teams to agree on 3 other days that we can use Gym 1-2 for our wrestling matches. So, but we haven't heard back from the school as to whether that was okayed or not, and we're in the middle of trying to coordinate 3 different league schedules. So,
Paul?
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like first of all, it's a whole logistical thing, then you get to other issues. Is this gentleman, Mr. Lupo, is the next step?
Lupo.
Did I say Lupo?
Yeah, you said Lupo.
Yeah, well.
You brought up another conversation.
Yeah, I know. This Mr. Lupo. I mean, to sit with Tim and our athletic director and to first see, the logistics, right, Tim?
Yeah, he's done that. See, the application process goes through building and grounds and then athletic director first, and they work out the dates and the times and all that, and then I get it.
So and
his came in September 25th.
When does your season start?
We'll start November 6th. Our first match is not until December 10th or so.
You're talking about practice also?
The practice, we already have the practice rooms already. We got that straightened out.
You got the application when?
Well, the district got it September 25th, and it goes through athletic department and building and grounds, and then they work the schedule, and it comes to me.
Okay.
And that's where I'm kind of at the point where you have to figure out what charge, and it's not a rental charge. It's the charge in question is charging custodial time for the time here.
Saturdays.
It's not rental fee. We waive the fee.
There are 2 charges that we face, and this is part of what we're going to have to discuss and come back to the board with a proposal on, and we'll figure out what to do this year for Mr. Mupo. But the first one has to do during the week.
Right.
Because you have custodians here, and the question then is, but there's extra labor costs associated with opening and closing a specific room or whatever, lights, and if things come up. Then there's the weekend rate, which is different, because if there's nobody else using the facility, by law I have to have somebody here who has a Black Seal license. So you have to pay for that person to be here. So those are the 2 things that we're trying to work through. The half hour is what was agreed to on during the week rate, as I recall. Half hour per session would be
per session.
So if they're here for 2 hours or for 8 hours.
I'm saying, are we at a point where we can get back to Mr. Lupo pretty quickly so that... What do I keep saying?
Lupo. You keep saying Lupo.
It starts with an M.
Lupo?
Lupo.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I apologize. What's your first name?
Mike.
Mike. Now make it easy. So we get back to, so Mike on his time frame, we can work together so he can put his schedule together, know when, and under what circumstances, he can use the gym. I mean, can we just, expedite this a little bit?
It's been done as much as possible.
Thank
When
you.
did we get the request for the weekend uses?
Well, that's what we got it September 25th.
That's what came to 25th, okay.
Yeah, so now it's in my seat. And now
All right, so now we can make a decision on what that rate's going to be and get back to it.
Is that the new gym? What do we call the new gym, the one all the way the far end?
Gym 1-2.
Gym 1-2. Is that the one where,
That's the one.
because the Chinese school doesn't use that gym, right?
No, I think the Chinese school does use the gym, but
We try to keep them somewhat in a similar vicinity for the classroom, so that is the most.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that would be the one that would be most likely the new gym, 1-2.
1-2.
1-2 is where the wrestling mat is, so that's where we're kind of limited to the wrestling mat.
That's where you end up
We
working.
had tried to move the wrestling mat to the other side of school, but then we'd have to store it somewhere, and there's no storage. So it would be difficult, for us to do it. But we only have one conflict with the Chinese school. All of our other matches are conflicts with the basketball practice, the freshman basketball team, and we've worked that out with the coaches already, I believe. As far, I got a note back on that.
I mean, it's a scheduling issue more than anything right now. Okay. Thank you for your comments on the,
thank you.
And we'll get back to you, I'm sure, on this quickly. Any other comments from the public at this time? Yes? Can you, excuse me, I need you to come to the mic, Bill Meredith.
This is an agenda item.
That's okay, you can talk, I just want you to come to the mic is all. And we need your name and your address.
My name is Mary Lou DeRosa, 5 Rock Road, East Watchung. I have just a couple comments about some of your committee reports. I just wanted to let you know, I sit on the Watchung School Board, and right now we have started up a Green Committee. So if anybody is interested, I'm sure that our Green Committee would be more than happy to talk to you about some of the ideas that they have gotten started, as well as Greenbrook. I know that they have started up, they just recently, they're going to have an event for children and parents at their school, so it might be something that the high school, wants to look into. I'm interested in negotiations. When is the contract up? When is
This is for the supervisors.
Oh, it's just supervisors.
Just supervisors.
Okay.
We've already settled with and approved a contract with the teaching staff for the next 3 years. That's in place. They're happy.
We love that.
This is, and we'll, as I said before, I expect that with the Principals and Supervisors Association, if not at next meeting, certainly by the one after that, we'll be approving another contract.
Great. And the other contact you might want to make, Watchung went through CUSAC last year. So I'm sure that you've been in contact with Dr. Maliska and so forth, and it is a grueling process. And I wish you good luck. That's what I say to you. And the second to last thing is back to school night would be wonderful if it was on 2 nights. I literally parked my car here at 4 o'clock and my husband drove me here at 7 o'clock because there was no way I was getting a parking spot. And, everybody that parks on Sterling Road is getting a ticket. So it would be great if we could do a 2-night thing. But lastly, and the main reason that I'm here is the same as Mr. Mupo, and I just hope that next year, I understand that charging this year and doing the whole facility plan and so forth was different than what we have done in the past. So I just hope that in the future that we are more organized and these organizations will know what's happening a lot sooner. The information that I've gotten from Mr. Mupo is that he's really been working on this all summer. And I would just hope that he shouldn't be doing that. I mean, I understand he's the president of our league. That's a lot of time and effort to be putting on him. And we are taxpayers here, as you all know. And I feel like my taxes are high enough. I shouldn't be paying anything extra for my children to utilize a little wrestling gym that is not utilized at night. And I understand you have other expenses, but we are taxpayers. We are paying the utilities in our tax bill now. So I just ask that you consider that next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Just a second one.
Okay.
It's their turn to talk, not ours. Any other comments from the public? Building. All right. With that, we'll close.
Okay.
We're going to go into board
Well, we'll have
discussion.
our-
I
Yeah.
just want to comment on the public comments.
Not supposed to. So
Not
that's what Paul's
supposed to.
telling you.
Sorry.
We have board discussion, you can comment.
When we go to board discussion, we can see if there's any other comments at that time. With that, we'll close the first opportunity for public to comment. If you have the endurance to stay around, you'll actually have a second chance later on in the meeting after we go through the agenda. Which actually doesn't normally take that long. We can go into board discussion now.
Oh, now?
Yeah.
Then after, could we have maybe a quick break?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay. Laura, I think, was...
We have 4 topics in board discussion. We have board goals, board professional development plan, policies, which I think we've already had, so we'll just, unless somebody has had a brainstorm and has some additional items, and then we need to talk on the board annual self-evaluation. Laura, you had a comment that you wanted to make, though, so if you want to do that now.
Something that, it's been very frustrating to me ever since I've been on the board.
Can we put this under the context of policy, facilities use policy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, because since I've been on the board, we've been working on the school facilities use policy, and you know, I've never been very happy with the direction that this is taken, because I, you know, agree with what Mary Lou DeRosa said in that, you know, everybody using the facilities, that request to use the facilities are taxpayers, and we should try to make it as easy as possible, you know, for our residents to use the facilities, the school facilities. It's a community resource. And I feel that some of the fees that have been set up seem very aggressive in terms of maybe the calculation or so, and puts a huge burden to these community groups that work so hard. Most of them are feeder programs that they're elementary age children, and then they come in here and then they feed into our program. So they're really training for what they're going to be doing at the high school level.
Okay.
So, you know, on many different levels, I feel it actually benefits the high school to, you know, we should be working with our community, you know, and you know, trying to, you know, make our facility as, you know, available as possible as a community resource.
Okay. That's not facilities use. We don't actually have it open for discussion, but go ahead, Pete. You have a response to that?
Yeah, I mean, Laura, I think it is somewhat unfortunate that it's taken us so long, but I think it's a reflection of how difficult this issue is, okay? I disagree with you. I think we do bend over backwards to get the facility used, but when we have a particular organization where we're incurring extra custodial fees, why is that the burden of the taxpayers throughout the town to pay for us keeping the building open extra for a particular group that wants to use it? I mean,
well,
it's
there might be a variety
discussion.
of groups that are using it, you know, so.
This is the very crux of this issue,
Yeah.
which is why, actually, we want, Mr. Mupo made the request, and Tim and I talked about the need to have this discussion at this board. And so his being here and having this discussion is actually the very heart of this, which is half of us think it's a public facility and they should go ahead and have access to it. And the other half says they should pay for it because the school's incurring some additional costs. Until we get the resolution on that, I would suggest strongly that we divide this somewhere down the middle and go forward, because Mr. Stiles over here has to come up and guess by Ouija board or less what to charge these groups. And we're not being fair to him or any other organization because it slows the process down. So strongly I would recommend that we come to the next meeting, and we will for the policy committee, with a recommendation that is somewhere in the middle ground here that we can all agree to. So, and then we can argue about it later on, but at least he'll have the guidance to go forward with it, okay? Is that, this is it. This is the discussion
that is,
right here.
that is it,
It was
yeah.
framed very nicely by the like, we couldn't, you guys did very well without being prompted. So that's it. Thank you.
And I think your suggestion of trying to find someplace in the middle where we can all come together around, so that, as you say, this process will be streamlined. If Tim has a policy he can look at and say, this is it, this is why, it's done.
Well, I know Tim spent a lot of time on this. You know, the committee spent a lot of time on this already.
We talked about 30 minutes for the weeknights during the school day when the school is here, because that was the time it seemed like the custodial staff may actually be pulled away from their job to go do something else. And that was then viewed as an expense that this district was incurring, because we might end, because they have assignments and they could then be missing that time, and we would then other work, and we would then have to pay them overtime to be able to complete their assignments. And so 30 minutes seemed like a starting point. I would offer that probably will come back to us in the next meeting, and we could then discuss. We'll discuss that in the policy committee to see if that's a reasonable amount. and then we'll bring it back. But I think we've got to get to a decision on this point. The rest of the policy doesn't seem to be an issue for people as much as it is the cost.
So the rest of the policy being which group constitute which?
Yes, yeah. You probably have a copy, but I would be surprised if you could find it. So we'll get you a copy.
And frankly, Laura, I'll also tell you that if we didn't have the type of pressures that we had on our budget, I would be feeling much more liberal about saying there's no reason to charge a fee for the use of our facilities. But, you know, I recognize that the taxpayers have entrusted us to figure out what's best for the taxpayers on this. We have to go back to the taxpayers every year and get our budgets voted on, you know.
On the other side of the coin, like we had the same discussion at Greenbrook yesterday, I mean, REC doesn't vote on the budget. So REC can fund things certainly, you know, to some extent. And it's all the same town, it's all the same people, but there should be some acknowledgement both ways. I mean, as far as that ability for REC to also contribute some amount of money when there are incremental costs to the district, because our budget does need to be approved.
With that, we can, thank you for bringing it up. We will end the discussion on facilities use. We'll move on to the other items. You had distributed to you a copy of the board goals. It came
yesterday.
Probably yesterday in a package to your house. I don't. I apologize. I'm still in plans to be able to have this, but you can look at it. I'm not suggesting that we have a motion to approve these at this time. I am going to suggest that we do this at the next meeting, that we approve these at the next meeting.
Get them at home.
And so I want you to take a look at these. These are the ones that we agreed to and we discussed at the retreat in July. So these would be our goals for the year. I just want to bring it back to you so we can get a chance to look at those, and we can decide that these would then be district goals going forward.
No, a packet that just came yesterday to the House, Pete.
Pete, it came to your house yesterday.
Didn't come to my house.
Didn't come to your house.
They were delivered by.
It's attached to the blue thing too.
Pardon?
They were delivered by Buildings and Grounds yesterday. They were picked up from my office for delivery.
Maybe you have this
It's
one
in the
that
packet
October
that-
13th.
No, you got it at the meeting. You didn't get it at your house. Sorry about that.
I didn't think there was anything that came to the house.
You took it with you at the meeting.
So we're not going to vote on these tonight unless everybody would here say yes, we are. But I just want to bring it to your attention again. Please read them. If you have any comments on them, we can go ahead and make modifications to them. But I would suggest strong, we really do want to get these adopted formally. Okay? They're basically, to be honest with you, as we discussed at the retreat, pretty much a continuation of our efforts from the prior year. So there's one on curriculum and instruction, there's one on facilities, there's one on finance, and there's one on communications. Okay? If you do not have a copy, we will get you one. Just email me or email Fran or Tim, and we'll get a copy emailed. Now, the other one I wanted to bring up is we are required to have a professional development plan for this board, and that professional development plan is to be based upon our self-evaluation, which we completed the requirements for that at the retreat, and we distributed yesterday again in the package that went to you 3 items that were for development plan. We need to approve this plan by November the 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I think it's actually the 18th before CUSAC. We're going to submit it to CUSAC.
So November 18th.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
We have a meeting on the 17th. So
we have a meeting on the 17th. I thought we had a meeting before that. Don't we have one
we have one the 3rd.
Yeah, we have one the 3rd. So what I'd like to do is actually review these in detail on the 3rd, see if you have any comments. And if at all possible, I'd like to approve them on the 3rd of November. There are 3 activities here, and I'll just read them for you in case you don't have a copy in front of you. And we need to put some timelines on these. And these were developed by Mrs. Thornton at our request as a result of our self-evaluation. If you remember correctly, the process we went through, everybody took a look at the self-evaluation, and you provided feedback to me with regard to those items that you thought were most critical. I took that list, I basically tabulated it and summarized it. I sent a copy of that out at the end of July to Mrs. Thornton, the administration here, as well as to you. So you would be aware of all the things that had come forward and what you guys had thought was the items that we needed to address. I then have talked to Mrs. Thornton or encouraged her to come back. She had offered to do the, come up with some ideas and some things that we could include in our professional development. And we then got that last week. So again, this came out in the package to you yesterday. The first one on it is develop an annual calendar to ensure all statutory dates are met. The second one is to hold a workshop to review process, requirements, and board responsibilities around superintendent evaluation with the New Jersey School Board Association. And the third item is to do a workshop that held to review board member roles and responsibilities with a particular focus on chain of command, improving the relationship between the board and the superintendent. So those would be the three items that there would be a professional development activity for us. And we would then have set up for the first one, we would set up a calendar, which I think we have a draft of already, that was provided to us at the last meeting. And then we'd hold two workshops, one of which is to review the process and requirements of our responsibilities around the superintendent evaluation, so we'd all understand what we have to do with regard to our superintendent's evaluation. I think most of us have some idea of that, but it'd be helpful for us to refresh our memory on that. And the second one, and the second workshop would then be to review the board member roles and responsibilities, with particular focus on chain of command and things that we can do to improve the relationship between the board and the superintendent. So those are the three professional development activities that had come back to us from Ms. Thornton.
May I just also add that if you recall this summer, the end of this summer, I gave you a calendar with tentative topics for discussion by each meeting date, so we can continue to flesh that calendar out to be sure that it's encompassing every statutory requirement that the board needs to pay attention to. So we have a good start on that one.
That was handed out at a board meeting probably, I want to say 2 meetings ago.
No, more than that. And it's on the it's on your login. It's on the board website. When you log in, it's posted there.
Okay, so that's professional. Now again, at the next meeting, you need to take a look at the goals, and you need to take a look at the performance improvement plan so that we can vote on those for approval.
Could you just tell us briefly again what the requirement is for a professional improvement plan under CUSAC? Is it simply that we adopt one?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
So
requirement is that
doesn't
we
have to have 3 items?
It's my understanding that there's no structure that has been defined as
So
to
when expressed it that way, it could be whatever way you'd like to do it.
This seemed to
Gotcha.
meet the things that we had identified as. It could be 1 item, it could be 10 items. Any other comment? Okay.
The only other thing I would say is on, if you want to consider the district goals, facilities, we talked about some green. Under facilities, maybe that's something that we should put as an item where we want to explore
Could you write up a greenness goal?
There's going to be a long discussion if we're going to try to adopt greenness as a goal.
Well,
this
investigate,
set
not
around.
to at least look at it. I think it's probably the right thing to be doing at this day and age, is to investigate.
I think we need a board discussion as to whether or not it's the right thing to be doing.
We're going to adopt a goal on that. We need to have a board, as Peter's saying, we need to have a board discussion on this topic. We can have that discussion at the meeting next. We could adopt all the rest of the goals, and we can have a discussion on that one at that time and see if we want to adopt it. Okay, if you can write a goal for us on that matter.
Did you first call that, what's his name, from Strauss Esme?
Bill, Dr. Nicastro?
Yeah.
For?
Well, no, I mean, you mentioned green, yes?
Yeah.
Goal, green goal? And weren't you just say?
I see, a goal regarding like green building, that type
Yeah,
of thing.
I mean, because, I mean, rather than, I mean, if you like, you can spend about 20 hours doing it, or you could call Phil
I just
and.
wanted a line on it that says the board will begin investigating use of green,
investigating what, green
products
paint?
or-
I mean, what?
Alternative energy sources.
Well, there's a lot.
And
I
I
mean,
don't,
it's
Jerry,
a,
so we'll
you
have
know.
the board discussion.
It's all encompassing. Go, you can go on online. Look at what University of California at Berkeley's doing. University of North Carolina. There are zillions of sustainability studies.
I thought this would be something that sounded good to do.
No,
It's not that it sounded good. I mean, I don't think there's any dissension. It's the right thing to do. In terms of your cleaning supplies, recycling, alternative sources of energy, perhaps having an organic garden here that they're doing in schools around the state. I mean, there are lots and lots of things that could be done, and many of them are really at no cost.
Right, and you might find a lot of them are being done already, or, starting to...
There's nothing that you could talk about, in terms of greenness and awareness that aren't being done, at schools, colleges, cities, municipalities, all around the country.
So maybe you could write the goal.
It's not a goal. I mean, it's been done.
Do we want to devote board resources to this? If people want to do this on their own time, that's fine.
What do you mean resources?
What resources?
If we're adopting this as a board goal, there's going to be board resources put into developing it, put into measuring it, seeing if we
first thing, call up Phil.
Can I just before we go any further on this, do we want to, let's just answer the following question. Do we want to have a specific objective under finance that would address the issue, something to do with environmental concerns?
It was under facilities, not finance.
Facilities.
Well, if it costs money, like if it costs $50,000 to put up some solar panels, it's a finance issue.
It's going to involve a lot of people. But
it runs across all these committees.
Regardless of where we put it, does this board want to adopt something that talks about environmental concerns or being environmental aware?
If you put a line item there that says complete outdoor facilities, hardscapes, and softscapes, it seems to me that almost alongside that, you want to look at. I mean, that's involving money and it's involving other things too. So it seems to fit under that genre.
I'm going to go around because I want to get an idea if we want to try to devote the time to put something in like that. Just if we want to try to extend these. Pete, can I get your response on this? On something to do with environmental or green?
He wants to do it, let him do it.
You what?
He wants to do it, let him do it.
All right.
Because we're going to vote on it anyway. So get this discussion off the table, let him do it, and then we'll discuss it when it comes forward.
It's not a him.
All right. Eric?
I thought this is just initiatives and that we're passing to the administration to come up something solid. Is that right?
I'm sorry, could you just, I'm having trouble hearing you actually.
Oh, sorry. I thought this is just a board initiatives, and then we're passing that to administration to come out something solid.
It would not be the details. It would only be a statement by this board that says that we want to do something in the area, just like we have with these others, in the area that has to do with environmental concerns and adopting various policies and programs to address that. That's what this is. It's a broad statement by the board, the detail of which is then provided to us by the administration, much of which has, I think, already been mentioned, may already be going on right now. I think there is already a lot going on. So do you think you want to see something like that stated as a board goal?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. I know your opinion.
Well, I thought I heard earlier discussion about solar, Rob had brought some things forward about using some, and I just thought it'd be a good thing to incorporate as a district, those kinds, if we're going to think about it, at least tell the world we're thinking about these things, we're looking at them. We may not be able to fund them or do anything else, but at least we're aware of what's going on around us.
I've got your feelings on it already.
So anyway, I have my
Pete?
I think it's obvious. I think it's the fad du jour, and I don't see any point in making it a board goal. I think it's going to be considered whenever we look at facilities, things like this. I am opposed to making it a board goal because we are then asking our administration to do something about it. I think they're stretched too thin as it is, and I think we're wrong as a board to give them additional goals.
Laura? I think I understand your position on this,
can
but you can state it.
I want to state it, please.
Everybody's got a chance to state their opinion.
Okay. I would like to see that the board make an effort to make, we're talking about buildings and grounds and facilities, is that the application we're talking about?
No.
Okay. Everything that we do to make it as sustainable as possible.
What does that mean?
Well, okay, and I'll give you one example. If you're using cleaning supplies, you can either use poisonous cleaning supplies or cleaning supplies that have no toxins, that type of thing. And there may be, in most cases, no additional cost to the district, but just a different way of doing something. In some cases, there might be a cost,
Okay, Rob? Your
Just,
chance.
a chance. I mean, I happen to participate in a team that did this for City University of New York. I'll be happy to email Tim our report conclusions. There's just so many resources in there. You'd be happy to see them. I mean, I don't even think this is. I understand Paul's point. We have a lot on our plate.
Peter.
Peter. Is that Mr. Lupo? Is that Mr. Lupo there?
It's Mike. Thanks. Move on.
Just call me Mike, that's right.
But I think it's stating the obvious. I mean, everyone's getting aboard of this train, and some things, like Laura said, whether it's cleaning supplies, whether it's doing recycling, and then up the scale to more money, more involvement, alternative energy, perhaps solar panels.
Perhaps even save money.
That's right, and doing something good and protecting and leaving this world a little better.
You wanted to go.
Correct.
All right,
And we can put.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you. If you say anything more, I'm going to ask you to write it for us.
I have written it. I'm going to send it to Tim.
Sandra?
I'm in favor of the awareness. I do think we will look we will look good if that we are aware of it. However, I too feel that at this point the administration shouldn't have something else put on them. So if it's something the board wants to do, Buildings and Grounds wants to do, by all means, let's move with it. But I think we have to confine how much energy we're going to put into it. I think we have an awful lot else on their plate and our plate too.
By the way, we have, Fran, we have an AP environmental class, correct?
We have environmental science.
So we have a lot of smart kids who I'm sure, under the tutelage of their teacher, could help us come up with putting together an environmentally sound, sustainable
That was your whole
programs and
carbon
practices.
footprint was a big
Can I ask
focus.
a question then, as we move forward on this? Excuse me, Fran. I'm interested in moving forward because we have the agenda and then we have executive sessions.
Okay.
So who would like to develop under facilities, a goal that would speak to environmental initiatives?
I'll volunteer.
Okay? What I need you to do then is to complete that and email it out so we can then distribute that goal up and along with the other goals updated so we can all have a discussion then on the 3rd or 4th, whenever our next meeting is, okay?
Stuff I can give you.
Could you do that?
Yes.
I think Rob has got, you said you were on a team already that did this, you probably have tons of resources on this. You probably have all the right words for it too.
Lots of things. We don't have to.
Okay. So Laura, you'll do that for us then?
Yes.
Okay?
Are you asking us to, this point of clarity, you're just asking Laura to
Put together the words.
put together the goal,
Yeah.
the wording for the goal? Okay.
Right, that's
Got it.
all. And then we'll,
And at this point, these are mostly statements of, direction.
that's all.
They're not action items, they're not costs,
Got
they're
it.
not
It's a high-
resources. It's just
It should be of the
high
same,
level.
it should be the same level of what these other statements are, so not action items. The goal should be of the same level that are,
What statements? Is there?
whatever the goal is from an environmental standpoint, should be of the equivalent level as to what the goals are that we have already developed, okay? Yeah, just language-wise, it should be about
Okay,
the same.
it should match that language.
Should
is
match
what you're
that kind of
saying.
language, okay?
It's like 5
All right, with that, we can go, we can end the discussion on goals. We'll end the discussion on professional development. With all of you, I know are now committed to coming back on the 4th or the 3rd and having those things reviewed and approved. The last thing I'll mention is that we are going to initiate another annual self-evaluation. It'll most likely start in the December timeframe. So we'll be issuing, getting some reports out, getting some forms out that we can then do our self-evaluation for, okay? Rob, hold on. Rob, I need your attention on this. So
You got it.
Be aware that self-evaluation time is coming up again for this board. It's going to be in the December, January timeframe. All right?
Thank you.
With that, we can move past the board discussion to the action items. Given that it's 9:30, we've been here sitting here for a while, would anybody like a short break at this point? in
Yes.
time? Do we have, we're going to go through the formal agenda. Do we have any, is anybody, hey, Pete, Tom, we're starting up, so I just want to know, before I get all the way through the A's, you didn't come back and say I didn't want to vote on that one. Do we have any of the A's that somebody wants to vote for, somebody wants to pull for separate voting? Any of the A's?
Close it quickly, Paul.
We have, by the way, I should point out to you that we have a walk-in A25. If you can make sure you've got that in front of you too. So does anybody have any of the A's, A1 through A25, that they would like to pull for separate voting? Do we
With the minutes, Laura was not here on September 3rd.
And I was not here.
Pete, you were not here on the 15th, and Bernie was not here on the 15th and 16th.
Bernie's not here to vote on it anyway.
That's right.
Now, do we need to change this?
Just change A14
Can
to session.
I want to point out to you before we vote on it or move it and second it, if you take a look at A14, it needs to be changed so that it says, if you have it in front of you, it's $105 per session. And in the second paragraph there, it should be $140 per session. And the difference there is that the session in the first one was 45 minutes, and the session in the second one is an hour. It's basically $35 per 15 minutes is what it boils down to. With that, that's going to be changed that's going to be the change for A14. Now, does anybody have any of the A's to pull separately?
Then I'll
Hearing none,
move it.
can I get a move?
I'm moving it.
Sandra's moved,
I'm moving to-
A1 through A25. Do I have a second?
Second that.
We have a second. Any discussion on A1 through A25? Jerry?
Just to clarify, I did ask the question, A16 and A17, they're paying roughly twice the amount for the same hour of service at A17 because we're going through the Morris Union jointure, that's correct?
That's right.
And then, I don't know, if you look at the math, it's like twice the
Yeah,
price.
okay.
So we're forced to do that because we belong there. But we do get some of that money back.
Yeah, we get a rebate on membership up through 2000, well, continually each year, but in 2010-11, we also get rebates on tuition-related services.
But we have no choice about where to use those services because the students there.
Students placed there.
And then 820, I also asked the question about whether there's any alternatives, placements on that. The rate jumped quite a bit, you know, and whether or not it's I know they have a special program there, but is that the only available?
The rate that was initially quoted, the 43,000, was they were quoting an LLD rate, and the student is an autistic student, and they do have an appropriate program for students with autism. It's a different configuration than what we offer here in the LLD. If that program, if that student were going, let's say, to the jointure, that number would be much higher.
Peter?
Fran, what's the difference between the Morris Union jointure and Morris Union Ed Services?
That's the Morris Union Jointure Commission is the consortium of districts in Union, Somerset, Essex County that we belong to. The Morris County Ed Services Commission is the corresponding county service to the Somerset County Ed Services Commission.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on A1 through A25? It's been moved and seconded. Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
Yep.
Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yep.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
We have two items in the Bs, B1 and B2. Does anybody want to pull one of those for separate voting? Can we get a motion on B1 through B2? We could just do them individually. All right.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded B1 and B2. Do we have any discussion on B1 and B2?
Just one correction on the, I'm sorry.
Just the question about the cost of B1?
There is no cost.
EGAD.
EGAD, no. You heard Kathy say there's no impact on the teacher in terms of teaching load. In fact, it's basically a benefit to the teacher to have this.
Thank you.
Any other questions on B1 and B2?
Fran, how are we going to get these, I think it's a great idea, how are we going to get these internships? Are we talking about like people in Warren, doctors or lawyers? I mean,
No,
is that?
these are within in-house.
Student internship.
This is the program she was
I
discussing
mean,
tonight.
we can look at expanding it as time goes on, but right now it's in.
Okay, fine, because maybe we could think about developing, I guess you'd call it an externship,
Right.
where kids, maybe in their senior year,
Right.
you know, because we have such a pool of professionals in this town,
It's hot on our plate.
and, because, you know, to sort of shadow people around, get a sense of what these professions are like, I think that'd be good, too.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, can I get let's just get a roll call vote on it.
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Falzarano?
Yeah.
Ms. Spector?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yep.
Ms. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun? Yes. Dr. Seeley?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
We have motions C1 through C15. I point out to you that 14 and 15 are on the walk-in agenda items. Can I get, does anybody have
Corrections.
Before we move and second these, first of all, let me find out, does anybody have any of these that they want to have pulled for separate voting?
C10.
We'll pull C10 for separate voting.
I want to pull C7 until after the discussion of C10.
And we'll pull C7 for separate voting.
And C9 I won't pull since Tim is about to correct the numbers on it.
On C9, does anybody else have any others that they want to, well, let's just correct C9 for right now. What's the correction to C9, so everybody knows what we're going to be moving?
It's, it should be 1,560 for the first two positions. It's 4 times 390.
Oh, there's a mathematical
Mathematical
mistake.
error. In the third box.
Script and cue costume manager fall should be 4 times 390 or 1,560.
Maybe Mr. D'Alessio should review these mathematical equations next meeting, huh?
Is there any others? Is that the only two corrections there?
No, CD has a correction too.
Just a second, Tim, is there any other correction on that?
And the International Thespian Society Advisor, same thing.
Is 1,560?
1,560.
And is the fall intramural one correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Boy, Tim, you just
Now,
saved
Jerry, you said there was
$15,000.
another one that had to be corrected?
No,
there's
Peter
one on
Fallon
CD
saved
that's
that.
a slight,
They weren't getting paid that anyway, right?
CD?
there's one on CD that's a slight typo.
Yeah, there was a revised CD in the packet.
Just so everybody's
Should've
aware of
been.
it.
Strength and
Yeah.
conditioning.
The strength and conditioning coach on the original packet that was distributed was incorrect.
It was last year's rates.
Okay, so it's been corrected on the list that you have right now.
Yeah.
So with those changes, anybody have C1 through C15 other than the two that Peter has mentioned, C7 and C10 to be pulled? With
And I'll
that,
move
can I
it.
get a motion?
I'll move it.
Wait, can I,
I'll move
there's
C1.
social,
Hold on, just a second.
there's a blank area for social studies.
Which one are you on?
I'm sorry, summer curriculum development, is that page 2?
I think we did that in these.
Are you on a motion here?
An attachment?
Attachment?
What are you looking at, Laura?
Attachment.
What letter?
BA, page 2.
BA
Oh, you know what,
or
it's
CA?
just a skip line, that's what it is.
Never mind.
I'll move C1 through C6, C8, C10 through C15.
No, C8, C9.
We need to with C1 through C6, C8, C9, C11 through C15.
So C8, C9, C11 through C15.
Okay, it's been moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the items that have been moved and seconded? C1 through C6, C8, C9, C11 through C15? Discussion? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
Yeah.
Mrs. Spector?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Seeley?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
All right, we have, you want to do C10 first and then C7?
No, you can move them both.
Okay, can we get a motion on C7 and C10?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, C7, C10. Can I, discussion?
Okay, the reason I pulled C10 is with this competitive cheerleading stipend of 14 units, and if you look over at CC, our varsity cheerleading coach also gets 14 units. It's the same person. We're going to be stipending this person more than the head football coach for the fall sports. I think that's wrong. I'm going to suggest that since the varsity cheerleading is already a contract position and the units are set, we're adopting a new position of competitive cheerleading coach. I would suggest that we only stipend it at 7 units, which would bring the recipient up to 21 units of stipend for the 2 cheerleading jobs she's doing this season, rather.
All right. You want to make that as a formal motion?
Yes.
Okay. So Peter's making the motion that we revise C10 to change it from 14 units to 7 units. Do you have a second on that?
Can I ask a question?
Well, we'll have in just a second.
Oh, you want a second?
All right, I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right, it's been seconded. Can you?
My question is, are these 2 separate and distinct jobs? Or is there an overlap? Or is there an overlap, Pete, that would justify what Peter's suggesting?
It was our impression that they are 2 distinct jobs, but the reality of what Peter is saying has validity. There is no way on this God's green earth that this cheerleading position, 2 positions, is going to take as much time, have as much pressure, and the fact that you are overseeing 3 levels of competition with probably 100 kids, however many people are on the football team. And I have to say, I have to agree with Peter, that was not the intent not the intent, was not seen by the committee when it recommended these numbers. So as much as I am as much responsible for bringing this forward, I have to agree.
So is there a way that you could, instead of having 2 titles, cheerleader A title and cheerleader B title, that somehow combine this into one position, cheerleading, and then pay lesser than the 2 separate jobs?
I think there is, but we would have to negotiate that with the association, and we could plan on negotiating it as a sidebar for next year to combine them as one position or whatever the board wants us to do. I think for now, Tom DeGancy's concern is that we've told this gal we are going to be funding competitive cheerleading this year. So I think there's a desire that we go ahead and at least fund it at some level.
Well, Tom, when the question is, we said we're going to fund this position, which up to this point you're volunteering or not getting paid. Did you represent to her you will receive X dollars?
No.
So she.
I did.
Okay, well that's my question. If we said you're going to get additional $6,000 and we come back and say it's $3,000, we sort of made
It's been moved.
Did anyone? I can't. Obviously, no one on the board did, and if Tom didn't, the only one when Nick talked with.
The agenda's public. That's the agenda's public. So
we said that.
Yeah.
But is it not possible to explain the same as Peter just explained to me and say we did not intend her to get more than the football coach, and therefore the correction has been made?
Well, I don't think, in all due respect, I don't think the issue is whether or not she get more than the football coach. I mean, if they were 2 separate, distinct jobs and she's working, more hours than the football coach or the soccer coach, maybe she deserves that. But I think, but
right, but that's not
but since that is not the case, then the job, the compensation should reflect the job, not 2 separate and distinct jobs. I think that's what you're saying. There's an overlap.
Well, they are 2 separate distinct jobs.
Can I ask a question? Who
I thought they were.
Where was the 14?
Well, how did we come up with this amount of money?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a good question.
Well, who put it in the agenda that way?
Can we ask?
From Tom and Nick.
That's the question I was going to
Let's
ask.
find out where the 14 came from.
That's Tom and Nick.
What we did, if I can.
Thank you, Tom.
What we did is we looked at the average salary. It looked like $4,000 to $5,000 in the conference. We looked at our ranges at 10 to 14 seemed to be the area, and that's what we established.
So you looked at the average salary in the conference for competitive cheerleading?
For competitive.
Do those same schools then also fund just a general cheerleading stipend?
Yes, there's two.
That's two.
General and competitive.
General, and is there compensation for competitive or for regular cheerleading about what we have?
That I don't know. I wasn't, you know, I wasn't.
I ask, is there cheerleading comparable to what we pay?
The regular cheerleading.
Didn't look
Yeah,
at it.
well, you look at the fall revised schedule.
No, he's asking other schools,
Against
do
other
they
schools.
pay
And do they
rough
have one
figure?
person doing both, or?
Could we table it and let the fellows look into this and bring it back?
Well,
I think we need to move on this.
These are both full, these are both being
These are
paid for the
fall.
fall.
Same
So it's not
season.
like we're saying one is the fall and one's the winter.
No, then I wouldn't be bringing this issue.
Because
before.
it's I don't want you, I mean this bad way, it's almost like a double dip type of situation. They're really not two separate and distinct jobs.
And from my point of view, it's not even so much a double dip as part of what we try and do with these stipends is to have them have some relationship to the amount of effort that the person puts in.
And the
And I'm not,
pressure and the complexity or the
thank you, Pete.
vastness of the program.
And I'm not denigrating the effort this woman has for the past couple of years, as Tom DeGancy will tell us, done this extra work as a volunteer and not been compensated for it. Tom has moved this forward to where she'd be compensated for it, but I have a fundamental problem saying that she's got enough time to earn basically twice the stipend that we pay her as we pay most of our coaches. who
Well,
work
even
at
more than that,
14.
more than how about the soccer coach or the track coach? Track coaches get $5,000.
Yeah, and that's the reason I'm suggesting that to get this through, let's go ahead and
Has she
approve her
started?
at 7
Is
years.
she's working on both these positions now, right?
She's doing it now.
She's doing it.
She's
now.
doing the
And
job.
This has been moved and seconded.
But is it improper for us to come to some number right now? How much is it? 7,000 each, Peter?
No.
No,
It's
it's $5,400,
So it's
$60 each.
It'd be $10,800, right, for the two? Is there a way that we can
Not
properly say it is not, we're not paying 10.8, we will pay something less than 10.8 and approve it tonight? Can we do that? I mean, it's a woman, woman shouldn't go another couple of weeks without getting paid, right?
I agree with you, but if we've made a mistake, then we gotta, own up to it and do what we have to do.
I mean, if she's expecting 10.8.
If that's what we have to do.
Well, I know, I'm just saying,
It's really
if someone,
$10,000.
if someone in this administration represented to her, you'll get 5,400 times 2, and she said, great, I'm working on that, then we can't go
If we have
back.
to do it for this year, that's
Fine.
fine, but make it clear that it is not carry over, and that this number will be looked at.
Well, if Tom didn't say that,
No,
and Fran
I
didn't know
hear
that, who's the possible person? Nick?
No.
Is that the only other?
Rob, the discussion we're having and the agenda is all public. We're being taped and the whole.
And
I understand
and
that.
she isn't right.
So just understand that. I'm not saying, I don't know if she knows or not. I don't know, but I'm just telling you.
But it's
This is
not
a public-
approved, it's just an agenda item.
It's, right, so if you're asking whether she knows or not.
So what are our choices? Either to vote on this or table it?
Or change the number of
To
staff.
change
Can we change the number?
We've already moved and seconded it, changed to
Change it
7.
to 7 units.
What do you,
7 units.
do you want, and Peter's proposal is,
He's already- it's
instead of
already-
10.8, it'd be what?
8190.
For the two together.
Tom had said 10 to 14 was the average range for those in the conference, 10 units to 14 units, right? That's what you had found? 10 to 14 units was like the average within the conference?
Probably little more 10 to 12, but since ours is 10 to 14, I took
But
our
then we don't
range.
know what their rate is per unit either.
I just took our range.
So you could pay 10 units and still be within the right number.
And I'm suggesting at this point, because what the units does, it gives you part of it, and then you'd have to go compare what every other district pays for a unit. So, I'm
Bob,
just
he was going
suggesting
by-
this.
He was going by dollars, right? I think you were going by dollars, Tom?
I'm sorry.
I think you were going by dollars when you came up with
Yes.
the...
What I'm trying to understand is the football coach, for example, works basically 6 days a week, right?
12 months a year.
I agree. I'm just saying, I'm not even talking about that. Just for this season, guys working 6 days a week. How many days a week does the cheerleading, for these two functions, is she working 6 days a week?
He's working 7 during the
Who?
season. The football people. are
Okay, I'm
working
asking
7.
this, with the cheerleading.
No,
with
you're
these-
right, you said 6, I'm saying it's 7.
No, it's basically, right, I understand. So I'm saying with this cheerleading position, the cheerleaders and the cheerleading squad, I mean, the two different functions, is she working 7 days a week?
Well, she'll work on Sundays. She may work 7.
Tom, can you talk about the comparability of work of these two positions? Are you in a position to do that at this time? Or?
Football is much more stressful, many more hours involved in it. There's not a comparison there, to be honest.
There is a comparison, and you've done it, which is to say the football has is a greater workload than?
Yes.
Well, he said there's not a comparison.
Yes.
He said the same thing. He said you can't compare the two positions.
You can't compare the two.
Well, can we not go along with Peter Fallon's suggestion? He's come up with a number, and we'll do it for this year. For next year, we'll see if we can combine the two positions, see what else we could do for next year. But can we not finish up on this?
It's been moved and seconded. We had an original motion. That one was moved. That one was amended to say 7 units. It was recommended by Peter to change it to 7 units. That was moved and seconded. We have a motion in front of us. Do we want to just vote on it now?
Wait, are we voting on Peter's motion or the original motion?
It's not been changed at all yet.
We have a motion to change that.
Motion, but not a
change
second
that.
to amend it.
It's been moved and seconded.
No,
So Peter's motion is the one we can vote on, Paul?
Stop.
I totally missed that then.
We moved the original one,
Right.
C10. Peter made a recommendation, and he made a motion that we revise that to change it to 7 units. That was seconded by Sandra.
Usually said.
So we now have in front of us a motion to amend the original motion, so instead of reading 14, it's going to read 7. Okay? That's where we are, I think. Now, does anybody have any more discussion on that? Can we get a roll call vote then?
So just in terms of dollars, just give us.
Can I get a
That's what I wanted
motion
to
can I get a roll call vote to approve the amendment to the original motion? So instead of reading 14, it would read 7, and then we'll vote on the original amendment. The total dollar figure here goes from about
10.8?
About 10.8 to 8.2.
Okay.
I just have we're still talking about this. So
We're still talking about the amendment.
Okay, so I just want to say, I mean, I've heard the football, compared to the competitive cheerleading, but when we talked about competitive cheerleading, we talked about, number one, it's a sport that's very prone to injury. It's one of the most injury-producing sports, competitive cheerleading. I'm hearing it almost diminished in terms of what's being said about that particular aspect of the sport. I thought the board said this is a very important sport in the sense that it does lead to injuries. We want to make sure everything is done correctly with this sport. So I'm just, the way it's being characterized, it's okay, it's cheerleading and competitive cheerleading and combined the two, and it's that. They're not the same, and I don't like what I've heard and the way I've heard it being said, because the board talked about already competitive cheerleading being a certain type of a sport with certain things that go along with it.
Peter?
Jerry, I just, I don't understand what point we draw from that in it, and I do believe it is an important sport, and I apologize if you think that anything I've said is denigrated. That is a sport. That is not my intent at all.
Well, the pressure, part of the pressure that goes along with it, because I think there's a lot of things in competitive cheerleading that were being just kind of...
It's Peter's turn to talk, Jerry.
But my concern is addressed more to the amount of time and effort that gets put in. I thought that the wrong judgment had been made to arrive at 14 units based upon the time comparisons, and that's all.
Does anybody else have any other comments on this at this time?
Just to Peter's point, and this is not being, even with Peter's amendment, unless I'm incorrect, these two positions, still this same individual will be the second highest paid coach stipend in position of the 3 seasons, right? And only what, about $1,000, if that, less than football coach? Is that what the math comes out to?
About $1,200. That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So I mean, it's hardly,
And if it was two different
positions.
people doing it, would it
Position. I'm talking, Jerry.
Okay.
Position is hardly denigrated. It's hardly, condescending to this individual who, from not being paid, will now be the second highest paid seasonal coach at Watchung Hills High School.
All right.
Thank you.
And is there any other discussion on the amendment to go from 14 to 7?
Let's move it. Let's go in
All right. Can I get a roll?
No, I'm sorry. I mean, there was comments made, and I'm going to answer. The salary was set.
It's not a
Again,
debate. It's not a debate.
We're not in the back and forth on it. The
Right.
question is, going from 14 to 7, is there any other specific discussion on going from 14 to 7 at this time? Can I get a roll call vote on the amendment? Now, we're not voting on the motion. We're simply voting on an amendment to take it from 14 to 7.
Mr. Binder?
No.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
No.
Ms. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
And Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, so we now have in front of us a motion that reads the same as it did before, except it now says 7 units versus the 14. Can I get a roll call vote? Unless there's some other discussion on that. Can I get a roll call vote on that motion that reads now 14 to 7, that now reads 7 units?
Are we voting
Did
on
we-
C7 as well?
Did we get a motion and a second on C7 and 10?
Yes, we did.
We got a motion and a
Got the
second on
motion,
C7.
second, you never got the motion.
Yeah,
Hold
I
on. Laura?
Sorry.
I'm confused as to what we're voting on this time.
What happened was, we moved and seconded C10 through we moved and
C7
seconded
and 10.
C10 and C7. Peter made a motion that we amend C10, so instead of reading 14, it reads 7.
Right,
In order to
correct.
get that, in order to make that change, we have to move
Two
that
steps.
second and then vote on that amendment. Then having made the amendment, as much as it seems redundant, we then have to vote on the original motion.
So we voted on being able to vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
We now voted on the amendment, which says, instead of reading 14. So now we have in front of us C10 and C7 combined. They've been moved and seconded. C10 was amended to go from 14 to 7 units. That's what we're voting on. Does anybody
I'll
have
tell you,
any?
we never voted on his amendment. I'll
Yes,
tell
we
you
did.
right now. We never did. Go back and check.
Wait, well, then
Well,
let's
no.
take another vote on
No,
it.
wait,
I'm
wait,
just saying
we
that
did
you-
vote on that. It was 6, that was 6-2. That was, we
You
voted on the
no on it,
amendment.
Jerry.
The motion was made by Peter, the second was made by Sandy.
The motion, okay.
That was on whether to amend it. If you weren't clear, we'll revote.
I will re-vote it if you want to, but
No,
I
let's
thought
go
it was
on,
pretty clear we
because
were
it's
making the
not- this is
amendment
not
to go
working.
from 14 to 7. That's all we were voting on. We're just trying to get the order on this. Is there any other discussion on C10 as amended and C7? Can I get a roll call vote on C7 and C10 as amended?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
I'm confused. C7 and C10.
C-
Why aren't
The
we
new
voting on those
C10.
separately?
We moved and seconded them together at the
Yeah.
same time.
But if I vote yes, then I've just have a different vote than I just voted for.
No, you don't.
You want to split the, I think that's what.
Because I want to vote the way I voted on the amendment. And I
Alright,
can't
let's
do
just
that.
split
All right,
C7.
okay, then the people that moved and seconded C7 and C10 together, would you object to us separating those now, even though C10 is getting amended? Are you all right with that? So we can separate C7 and C10, and then we can have those voted on separately.
Jerry, you got to tell them whether or not
You're all right with that?
agreeable to that.
Okay, so we're now going to have separated C7 and C10. Can I get a roll call vote on C10 as amended to read from 14 to 7 units?
Mr. Binder?
We're just voting on C10 now, as amended.
The new C10.
We're just doing
Mr.
C10.
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
No.
Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
And Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay.
Now you want to do C7.
C7 was moved and seconded, and the people had agreed that we separate these two. Can I get a roll call vote on C7?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Excuse me. Mr. Falzarano?
Yes.
Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yep.
Ms. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
And Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. We can now move on to the D.
That was easy, right, Paul? Is that easy? That was an easy one?
That was easy. That's a layup. Can we move on now to the Ds? We have D1 through D19, I believe. Am I missing any?
19.
Does anybody have any of those that they wish to have pulled for separate voting? D1 through D19. Hearing none, can we go ahead and get a motion on D1 through D19?
I will move D1 to D19.
It's been moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, D1 through D19. Do you have any discussion? Hearing none, can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
Yep.
Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz? Mr. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
And Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Okay, we are now on to other business. Does anybody have any other items for other business?
Thank you, Thomas.
Rob had something earlier? Rob, did you have other business?
You had
Oh,
a
yes.
motion that you wanted to make about the lighting in the tennis court.
Yes. That it would be, I almost got, this
You
is
wanna
no
make a motion? You
steps.
gotta
This
make
is
a
actually,
motion.
this is actually a motion that saves money, okay? Essentially, I'd like to be that the turning on of the outdoor tennis court lights will be subject to discretion of the athletic director. How's that? Okay?
Works for me.
Say that again?
Whether or not the outdoor lights on the tennis courts are turned on will be at the discretion of the athletic director.
How can you, can I speak to that?
Or perhaps,
Well, that's just, you get your chance.
or maybe
That's
to
the
phrase
motion.
it better, what we're trying to accomplish is,
I understand what you're
maybe
trying to
maybe
accomplish.
better, they're off unless the athletic, I'll phrase it, the tennis, the lights remain off unless the athletic director authorizes their being turned on.
Or the soup.
What?
Or the soup.
Or me, yeah.
Or district, I mean, superintendent, or, right, I mean,
Let's just make it the superintendent or designate.
correct.
Okay, that's the motion. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Your chance to speak, Pete.
Once it's out of the competitive Watchung Hills tennis team practicing or playing, it's no longer under the direction of the athletic director.
Well, we said superintendent.
But I need to speak to that point. Whether it's the superintendent, it is not under athletics.
But I'm going to be designating the athletic director to be aware of when the lights are on.
There is an automatic, not an automatic, there is a manual switch. You go out there now, you put them on, you go out, you put them off.
We're going to change that.
I hear you, but it has nothing to do with athletics. Just like the walking lights on the track that are there. And they burn every day, every night, until a certain time. Just a little bit of history.
Do you think
Sandy
that
will
we should-
remember. The lights were there as a courtesy and as a, if that is the word, for the community. So, again, to make it athletics, it is completely, it should be under, quote, buildings and grounds, or whomever.
Well, I make it, but the superintendent, it's her call, okay? Someone calls her up and says, we're having the, Susan Komen evening tennis match. Fran say, great idea, it serves the community, we'll put the lights on. Okay, it's her discretion. I'm trying to say, we're trying to, they're off unless Fran says they're on, to save $6,000 or more. That's a simple motion.
One other little piece to this, that if those lights are so easily turned on and off, that means there has to be some electrical work done to change that. So that means the board is aware there'll be some cost incurred to change that from just an automatic on-off
Right.
to
a key,
something
to a key that opens it up.
Buildings and grounds as a request for use of facility, just like any other request for use of facility. It'll go through the buildings and grounds procedure.
I just
Application.
advocated for the PA.
Fine. You're concerned about the process, not the issue itself, is that it?
Correct.
Fine, I make it to incorporate Pete's comments, however he wants it. I mean, my idea is keep them off unless
be
there's a
that
compelling
general.
reason to turn them on.
I think if we just leave it at the superintendent's discretion.
Fine.
That will answer the question. It can go to buildings
Fine.
and grounds, it can go to.
Okay.
District
She can designate someone, right?
administrator.
I don't want to make this into more discussion than it is. That's my motion.
I would just ask a question. Do we know impact of, do we know, first of all, is the $6,000 a year cost, is that come from the electric company?
It's an estimate based upon information that was provided by the utility on a rough way
Yes.
to estimate fixtures of that size,
So
and
we
that
have that based
duration,
from the
and a
utility
look at our actual bill for the rates we're paying.
I hate to
And-
muddy the waters, but I mean,
Do we, can I get my last question in? Have we, and I know you asked this question before, but have we reviewed the security implications, and are we sure that there are none?
Steve told us tonight.
With these Warren PD.
Okay.
Warren PD.
I got my two questions in.
Did he
Thank you.
review
are we budgeted to do $6,000 a year on the lights? Is that part of our budget?
No, just we pay
Just- we
electric.
just- we just-
Correct, right.
I mean, for example, perhaps solar lights would cost $6,000.
We'll look into it. After you get done with your policy,
Precise reason
hurry
why
up
I'm
and
opposed
write
to
that policy.
green. A precise reason why I'm opposed to green. You'll spend $6,000 to put in
Yeah, but
lights.
if each year you're spending $6,000, you're saving.
No, we're gonna
money.
save 6. We're not even gonna put
That's a good
them on.
point.
But you're throwing a number around, and we don't know what the number actually would be.
We'll see.
Do we know, I just have a question, do we have any idea as to how much those tennis courts are actually used in the evening?
No.
You know, are we gonna get, are we gonna get like 100 parents that are gonna come out here and say, I
You
go up
might.
there and play
You
tennis
might
with
get a
my
few
kids?
residents that might.
Maybe.
They're used to putting them on and off. There may be some people who are used to just coming and turning them on and
Maybe.
using.
Can
Are they
we
gonna
put,
be
could I
able
make
to
a
not turn
suggestion that
them
we
on?
put something out there so that they know that if they do come up here and they're a parent and they play with their kids or something like that, that they have an avenue to talk to the superintendent to see if they can maybe leave them on?
No.
I don't think, well, no, you could say, you can post, how about this, you could post a sign
Post a
saying,
sign, say,
you know,
these
lights,
are on at night.
lighting is not available unless arrangements are made
Yeah.
through the district office. So,
Something like that.
and if you have requests, call the district office, and then you can say no.
Can we,
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll love that.
Well, pass it to Tim.
All right. Can I suggest that be included in this motion so we have such a sign on this court?
I think it's a detail that
We'll let
that
them
they'll
deal with it.
figure it out.
discretion.
Does anybody have any other discussion on this? It's been moved and seconded properly. It's up for any other discussion? Can I get a roll, it has to
All
do
in
with money?
favor?
Can I get a roll
No,
call vote?
We're not
It has-
spending money.
It has to do with money. We're going to vote on it. Nice try. We are, because we're going to have to buy a panel to put it on this thing out there.
Okay. Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
No.
Mrs. Fechner?
Yes.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yep.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Don't forget that sign out there for me, okay?
Then the sign made right away.
Any other
It's gonna
business at
say
this
call
time?
Paul Seelig if you want these
Yeah,
lights
call
there.
Paul Seelig.
The lights
That'd
are
be
off.
fine. My phone will be turned off. Any other discussion, any other business at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to second opportunity for public. Hearing none, we'll move on to executive session. We're going to go into executive session for matters of pertaining to personal matters that are governed by confidential matters and attorney-client, I mentioned personnel,
Have to.
and not action may be taken later. With that, we can move on.
So moved.
Can I get a motion on that?
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor of going to executive session? We're in executive session.